Sometimes, as a year comes to an end, you are tired of the heavy lifting. There's a time for serious conversations about important things, and it doesn't feel like that time is now. Indeed, this feels like a good time for what I call a type 4 conversation. In a past episode, I've spoken about the 4 types of conversations I've had on the seen and the unseen. In its early days, I had type 1 conversations, where I examined the impact of policies, narrow subjects, short conversations. Then I evolved to type 2, in which I did deep dives into subjects. Those episodes could last 3 or 4 hours, and examples would be my episodes on education and health with Kartik Muralidharan, my episodes on Kashmir and CAA with Srinath Raghavan, or my 2 most popular episodes, The Loneliness of the Indian Woman and The Loneliness of the Indian Man. Then I moved to type 3. Deep dives into people, almost like oral histories or assisted autobiography. These could last over 8 hours, such as my episodes with Shanta Gokhale, Jerry Pinto, and KP Krishnan. My longest with Devdutt Patnaik was over 12 hours long. Well, type 4 is actually easier than all of these because it's just relaxed conversation without an agenda. It can meander this way and that. They're fun to have, fun to listen to, and the time just passes smoothly. I did an episode of that sort with Jai Arjun Singh and Subrat Mohanty, another one with Roshan Abbas and Vikram Sathe, 2 episodes like that with Krish Ashok and Naren Shenoy. I'll link them all from the show notes. These episodes were what Bengalis would call addas and what one of my guests today would call pulyabazi. These are a lot of fun. I should do more of them. So hey, here goes.
Welcome to The Seen and the Unseen, our weekly podcast on economics, politics, and behavioral science. Please welcome your host, Amit Varma.
Welcome to The Seen and the Unseen. My guests today are actually my 2 favorite public intellectuals in India, Shruti Rajgopalan and Pranay Kotasane. They're old friends who are also fantastic thinkers. Every time I meet Shruti or Pranay, they have something new to teach me. Well, I happened to be in Bangalore for around 20 days earlier this month, attending a couple of conferences Shruti organizes, and it gave me a unique opportunity to do an episode with both Shruti and Pranay. I figured we'd just hang, chat about what we did and learned in 2025, and other random bakchodi. We ended up talking about horses, purpose, gossip, friendships, second acts, and a lot else. No economics or geopolitics or policy in here. You can listen to the Life and Times episodes I've done with them to know them deeper. I've linked those episodes in the show notes. In this episode, we are just chilling. Much fun came. Please do join. But first, here's a quick commercial break. Are you a watcher or are you a doer? Neil Simon once had this great quote, there are 2 kinds of people in the world, the watchers and the doers, and the watchers sit around watching the doers too. And in most things, unfortunately, I've been a watcher. I have great plans, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but I never get around to them. Procrastination comes in the way, self-doubt comes in the way, and you've often wondered, I'm quite sure, is there someone who can help me go past this self-doubt and get the job done? My good friends Utsav Mamoria and Chuck Gopal run something called the 6% Club. Both of them have been on the Seen and the Unseen. They're great creators. And the idea of the 6% Club is to take you from content idea to launch in 45 days. That's right. You sign up for this course and over a series of weekends, they'll teach you everything they know about content creation and help you get started. They've run 7 cohorts so far. They've taught 300 people, many of whom have started different kinds of creative products, whether it's YouTube channels, or podcasts, or newsletters, on AI, finance, health, etc., etc. Just a whole bunch of categories. They will help you find the category of one in which you belong, and their course will include masterclasses by people like me, Krish Ashok, Lavanya Mohan, Mahima Vashisht, and others. Their next batch starts in February. Their link is on their website, the6%.club. I will link it from the show notes also. And if you write to them and tell them that you heard about them from the Seen and the Unseen, you will get 10% off. So stop procrastinating. Don't be just a watcher. Become a doer. Start that virtuous cycle. Remember, the 6%.club. Go for it. Shruti and Pranay, welcome to the Seen and the Unseen.
Thanks, Amit. This is year-end 2025. So, yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, and there are no 2 other people I'd rather be with. So, this is very awesome. We're recording this in Takshashila in person. So, it is super nice to sit across both of you.
As I said in the intro, which I haven't recorded yet, so why am I referring to it in the past tense? It's because you've already heard it, dear listener. And as I intend to say in the intro, you have already heard, we are not going to talk about super serious stuff today like geopolitics, politics, economics, etc. I'm just guessing that everyone who hears this show knows all three of us. This is Shruti's 20th episode with me, if I'm not mistaken, and Pranay's 17th episode with me. So, yeah, guys, well done. Take your medals.
Catching
And
up
yeah.
with you, Shruti.
Please overtake me.
So I am going to grant you, dear listeners, the same pleasure that I am experiencing right now, which is hanging out with people that I enjoy hanging out with. And so what we're really going to do is we're going to ask each other about our personal highlights of the year and if we have stories to tell. And then we are going to ask each other random questions that we haven't told each other yet, or in my case, even thought of. And so we'll chill and we'll just keep talking till Pranay's hard stop comes. He has a meeting in a few hours. And yeah, and it's a beautiful life. It's a beautiful year. Who wants to go first? What interesting thing happened to you this year? Memorable thing? Anything that you'd like to talk about?
Well, today the most memorable thing happening is all the Indigo cancelled flights. We are recording this in early December, and we're here for a conference in Bangalore, which is why we're all together in the studio. And there's a lot of drama associated with conference participants coming and going. So I feel like a few years from now, we will all remember each other as, just a Bard Grahit, COVID Grahit, all those Pidit, right? We will be Indigo Pidit, and we will have some solidarity and memory and empathy for each other from this.
Shruti organizes 2 conferences close to each other every year. I've had the pleasure of being at both in the past and being invited to both this time. And I perform a useful role, which I have realized. I am not called there for my intellect or my talking ability or anything like that. I'm called there because the first of the conference, which is a EVN conference for all the people she gives grants to, features really young people. And if I wasn't there, the average age would be 15. And because I am there, the average age goes to 18 or 19. So that is my purpose, to make it look like an adult conference. And this is a mind-blowing conference because the selection effect kicks in. The most incredibly talented young people I've come across. It I think of myself when I was 18 and I'm like, what even is going on?
Totally. Yeah. Same feeling. The people there are so inspired and they are willing to do so many things that it's fun to just be there in that room.
They're inspired and inspiring, which tells you that it's a virtuous cycle. And the second conference is the Ideas of India conference, where Diggaj eminences speak about serious matters. And my purpose there is the opposite. It is to bring the average age down. So
there are a lot of young people there.
This year there are lots of young people and I'm looking forward to meeting them.
But the first one I think you guys enjoy so much because it is not a conference. I think that was kind of the point. The idea was just, this is Emergent Ventures, which is the grants program I run. And Tyler Cowan is the one who came up with the idea. But the idea of the meetup or gathering was also unconference sessions. And what do we mean by that? We call it unconference for a particular reason, which is we don't want what happens at a conference where people are talking at each other and they're performing and all of that. Actually, it's genuinely just a meetup or a retreat. There is no agenda. We just, the only thing I'm particular about is that we all get together in a given time and place and we eat really good food. And my strong faith is, if very smart people get together in a room, magic happens.
Can I add to this? So I'm always surprised by how well an unconference session works, right? Because even this time in that EV session, see, there are 200 people and you have divided them into, I don't know, this time there were 10 or 15 simultaneous sessions happening. But when those sessions are happening and you walk out of the room, there's pin drop silence. Like everyone's involved in some or the other group and no one's forced them to be there. No one's forced a topic onto them. But the way it works always surprises me. So this unconference idea we copied after seeing it at an Ideas of India conference, and we've done it for even online. We've done it online for our GCPP academic conference and it works quite well. So I think this is one idea to be copied by anyone.
Yeah,
it's
so
really
this,
cool.
I didn't come up with it. It's someone else's format. The reason Tyler and I are so attracted to it is we strongly believe in spontaneous order and emergent order, right? So basically, dear listeners, the idea of an unconference is is basically you just have a time and place and people just stick post-its on a wall. I'm not making this up. I'm not sort of underplaying what's going on. It is actually a post-it and a Sharpie. You write down an idea. So you can discuss something like, everyone who wants to read their favorite poems, which was actually one kind of session. There are people who will play the flute. There are people who will discuss AI. There are people who discuss geopolitics. There are people who discuss their own personal and professional projects. And you literally just stick a post-it under a given time and place, and you meet there, and everyone just chats about whatever is being discussed, and it's completely spontaneous. There's no moderator. There is no chair. There's nothing. It's like ped ke niche baith ke, the way you would do an adda of some sort. And Pranay specializes in pulyabazi. It's really that feeling. And I think the core idea is just because something is not designed and structured doesn't mean it's chaotic. And I think that's also the Hayekian insight of emergent order, right? Just because it's not top-down design doesn't necessarily mean it's not organized or systematized. It just means bottom-up, people will figure it out. And seeing that in action 5 sessions in a row is really, really special. And seeing that in action with young people is super inspiring.
I want to double click on the poetry session to talk about how special it can be. Like, that is the best unconference session I've ever attended. Our friend Deepak VS, who's also been on the show, put up this thing, posted a note, read your favorite poems. So we landed up, and initially there were Deepak, me, and another lady, and we are like, okay, so we were joking about how Deepak's going to read out poems and we are going to clap and etc. etc. And then the room filled up and we were all reading out poems. And it was just awesome. Like, one lady read out something in Hindi, and one of the people present there was a musician. In fact, there were 2 musicians. The flutist you mentioned spoke to the other musician and said, "What's coming to mind?" And that guy said, "Swing. This is how soldiers march." And then he stood up and he started marching to demonstrate the rhythm. And that was beautiful. And, there was a Malayalam poem read out. There was a Kannada poem read out. And at one point, another of our close friends who runs this great podcast in London, she read out this poem about grief, and I was very moved by that, and it reminded me of a beautiful poem I'll link from the show notes called Long Distance 2 by Tony Harrison. And I said, I want to read this poem out, but I'll start crying if I do, so let me ask Deepak to read it out. And then Deepak started reading it out and he teared up, right? So it's such a beautiful connection where poems on grief were read out in 3 languages, and that's awesome. And on the face of it, you'll think these are all young 15 to 17-year-old people, and some in their 20s and whatever, and they're doing things in tech, and they're building rocket engines, and they're solving for climate change and all of that. And where does poetry come into this, and etc., etc. And then you have these awesome human connections happening.
They have a depth and wisdom that is a little surprising when you see it happen or unfold in front of you, because they look so young. Like, they look like their braces just came off yesterday.
No, I was wondering, when you said about spontaneous order, to what extent is this spontaneity required, in the sense that here also we need to have some that it should be split in 1 hour sessions, or it needs to be split in this kind of room. So because I always encounter this while doing the academic conference sessions, sometimes the students come back and saying it was too chaotic. At some point of time, you also need to have like 1 hour sessions, or so it is a metaphor for many other things, right? When we say urban governance, and we say there is a role for some kind of deciding things beforehand. So what do you guys think about?
Exactly that. Very much like the market. The market is not just chaos of people just hanging out with each other, right? There's a structure. We take certain types of property rights as given, right? We assume that we're not going to punch each other out. We're actually going to trade with each other. There's a certain institutional setting in the shadow of which prices emerge, which is what Hayek talked about.
And can that institutional setting be top-down?
Its institutional setting can be top-down, but the best institutions and the most robust ones are also the ones that have emerged and then at some point been codified into property rights or something. Because the idea is, who knows the perfect property rights framework? No one. That's the thing is, top-down one is, of course, the problem is it's got all the illiberal things that sneak into it, which is, Tanashahi and dictatorship and things like that. But the other part of it is the knowledge problem. Who is that one person or a small committee of people who know exactly how to design things perfectly? No one. So even the best institutions are maybe enforced top-down, but they don't necessarily get written top down. They do emerge bottom up at some point, and then people are like, okay, these are the rules of the game that have emerged and we're going to enforce this, right? I am the enforcer. I like to be punctual, and then every session starts and ends on time, and that's basically the only thing. But I think that's how Hayek would have thought about it too. The second part of why I think this works is you guys talk about your favorite sessions and the stuff that clicked. We don't talk about stuff that didn't click. But that's also because we don't sweat it. There are unconference sessions where no one showed up and then they just leave the room, or they do something else, or people are just chumma chatting, right? Which is also fine because you can vote with your feet. And there were sessions where there was one session which was about how to make friends as an adult. And how difficult that might be, or how easy that might be for some people. And the people who attended, I came to that session in the second half, and the people who attended the session the first half have a completely different version of the session than the one in the second half. And we exchanged notes, and they were like, yeah, it was not that great. Like, people weren't really warming up. And I was like, what are you talking about? That was one of the best sessions. Like, oh, clearly people loosened up in the second half. So all these are parts of spontaneous order. I think the commonality between the three of us is we're willing to live with that, and we're happy to experiment. I'll tell you what we get in return, as opposed to this, telling people what to talk about. So first problem is, I don't know what young people should talk about. I'd rather listen to them. They should tell us what they're thinking about. But the second problem is, it becomes a little performative. And I think what you guys are circling around but haven't said yet is authenticity is the most lovely thing about this conference, right? Whether it's the poetry session or anything you experience with a young person, it's like you are seeing their most authentic self because there's nothing to perform to. There's no gallery, there's no audience. You're just trying to meet people one by one, right?
Also, there's another factor is young people haven't practiced performance yet.
Yes.
Many of them have never had to perform or performed, so the imperative isn't there.
Exactly. And here it's very much like, the tone is also set at the top. Tyler is not at all performative. Like, he's very authentic and very easy. So if all the grown-ups and the most important people in the room are not performing, then you're like, oh, this is a pretty chill thing, right? So people always come and tell me, oh, we didn't know you were so relaxed. I'm like, I'm not relaxed. This is a rumor that I'm relaxed. But that's what they mean. They mean you are not performing a version of what a grown-up sounds and looks like. You're just being yourself and interested in listening to other people. That's what they mean by relaxed.
I don't think it is. People are always performing. We are always performing. Life's a stage. We are in any setting. We are performing, right? So and even as young kids, they would be in schools. They are doing MUNs and whatnot. So performance is a part of growing up, and I think but the difference in this setting is that you can be freer than you usually are because you can vote with your feet, you can go to a topic that is, and no one's sort of judging you for that. I think that non-judgmental thing is the more defining.
I agree with you. I don't mean they're non-performative in the sense, the way we are when we're in our knickers in our bedroom or something. That's not what I mean at all. I mean, there is a certain version of how someone is supposed to be at a professional conference or gathering. And because ours is not a conference, it's just get together in a room and chat with no agenda, that pressure goes away of, oh, I'm supposed to have a prepared spiel and I'm supposed to pitch in 10 minutes or I should have slides. That stuff just disappears. So I think the bigger part of it is also the no agenda. I don't have any plan. Just like this podcast.
Let me also elaborate on what I meant when I said that they haven't practiced performance. In the sense, obviously all the world's a stage, and even when we are alone, sometimes we might be performing for ourselves. Completely by that point. But a couple of things. Like I did this little session with a fellow podcaster on podcasting, and one of the questions came from this 15-year-old who was there, and it was such a charming, beautiful question. Of course, it was prefaced with, this may be a silly question, which no one should ever preface a question with because no question is silly. But it was so charming and open, and there's no performative element to it in the sense that she really wanted to know. It was just genuine curiosity. What you often find in most adult gathering is that even when you ask a question, you are thinking about how you're wording it. Maybe you're asking the question to appear smart, and you're thinking of how people will perceive the question, and you may or may not ask the question based on that. All of that is muddied in, and here it wasn't. It was just unbounded curiosity. And the second thing is that what I often find at conferences of older people is, I think there's a phrase Parumita Vora once used in one of her episodes with me about people jogging on the spot. And I think there are some conferences where you come across panels where there are 5 people on stage and they've been jogging on the spot for 30 years. Everything is autocomplete. You know exactly what they're going to say. You can script it. You also know that the women out there are going to get interrupted more than the men, and the men are going to repeat what the women said, and people are going to clap. And everything is just from a playbook, and you can just make out what's going to happen. And these people don't have that autocomplete simply because they don't have that LLM. They haven't gone out there and spoken 300 times, and they don't have their sound bites ready.
Yeah, and I mean, but there are people. You've gone out and spoken 300 times. We all have. But Tyler Cowen certainly has. But we are not doing that either. So I think there is something about changing the setting and saying, hey, this is not a conference, which is why I keep repeating it over and over again, right? We are so immersed in the world of professional conferences. You started the podcast with, I attended these 2 conferences this week, right? But we keep emphasizing that this one is actually not a conference. The policy conference is a conference, of course.
Very true. So was that your learning for the year, or
was that my learning for the year?
Or was that your experience for the year?
I have lots of experiences for the year. This is just something I do every year. Now and I do multiple unconferences, right? You guys come to the one in India. We had one in Ghana. We had one in Arlington. So we do this every year in multiple places because of immigration restrictions and travel issues. And the world is getting stupider. So I get to experience this multiple times a year. At Mercatus, we do an unconference for all staff twice a year. Maybe once a year. We aim for twice a year. And that's how I really get to know other colleagues of mine who are not working on the same things I'm working on. So I wouldn't say the unconference is the highlight in the sense that I do many a year. Just meeting EV India winners is the highlight here. I mean, they are just so amazing. I mean, I'm biased. Obviously, this is a little bit like, you know how parents think their baby is the most beautiful baby in the world. So obviously I run EV India. So I think it's the most amazing thing. But just meeting them in person, looking at their faces, seeing them so happy when they get excited about an idea, when they give me a hug before they leave, that stuff is just, it's incredible.
So I just want to say to everyone listening that if you're a young person, or even if you're not a young person, but you have an interesting idea, think about pitching it to EV and understand that this can be very small grants for very small random projects. You want to go on a school project somewhere, to a museum somewhere, and you don't have the flight ticket or whatever. Even for that kind of small stuff, you can write into EV. And just being plugged into the community is absolutely invaluable. It's more invaluable than the money, I think most of your people would say.
And the only thing we look for is moonshot ideas and ambition. We have no prior, at least I have no prior on what I'm looking for. I'm in Bangalore right now, and a lot of the emergent ventures ended up being startups, and they've done very well. Every VC in Bangalore has written to me to meet at this point. And now they want to know what is the secret sauce, and no one believes me that there is no secret sauce, and I have no agenda. I'm not going looking for something. I know my Hayek well enough to know that if I went looking for it, it would be a terrible idea. So when Amit says it's open-ended, it could be anything, don't feel shy, don't think this is a stupid or a silly nothing thing. Moonshots are always silly nothing things until they become moonshots. So just go for it. And I read every application, every single one personally. I have never just read like 10% of an application and said, this is boring. I'll get to the end of it, sometimes read it twice, and then we filter and do calls, and then the final lot gets selected. The call is a 20-minute call on WhatsApp audio. It is the lowest barrier that we can think of, even if people are in remote areas and have bad bandwidth and you don't live in a fancy room with a good Zoom background. So it's a very chill conversation that I like to have just to get to know the person, and that's it. So as Amit said, if you have moonshot ideas, please apply.
Now I wanted to talk about something different. Like, because we are talking about the year end, do you folks actually make some process goals or idea goals in a year? Or broadly, I mean, might not be at the beginning of the year, but do you sort of think this month broadly these are the processes? It might not be about uh, hard goals that you want to write a book or something like that. Do you do that?
Process for sure.
So let me share my sort of evolving philosophy on this. And as we are also talking about what happened this year, I'll kind of begin with that particular story. At the start of the year, this terrible thing happened to me, and I had a heart attack, but that was not the terrible thing. The terrible thing was I didn't know it at the time. I was going through a health crisis, and at one point the doc said that you've had one, possibly more minor heart attacks in the recent past. It was probably two we identified later. And what had really happened was in December last year, I had gotten what appeared to be COVID. It was a viral thing. I didn't get tested, but it appeared to be exactly COVID. And after that, I had what appeared to be food poisoning with a lot of vomiting and whatever. And then whenever I would walk 200, 300 meters, I'd feel a tightening in my chest. And my assumption was I have had a COVID-like thing. This must be a lung problem. And I kind of ignored it and traveled with it. And 6 weeks went by, January went by. Then I went to my good friend Lancelot Pinto, India's best lung doctor. And he said, Amit, you have the best lungs in South Asia. There's nothing wrong with your lungs, but kindly go next door and talk to my cardiologist friend, which I did. He asked me to do a particular test for something released by a heart muscle called HS troponin, which is only released in high amounts when an event happens. So he said, okay, you've had a heart attack or a couple. We did a quick test. I had a 90% blockage, went in to get a stent. It was 100% by the time the thing happened, but it went well. And after that, I was told that you have the heart of a 30-year-old man. So I joke that I'm now finding 28-year-old women attractive, but it is a joke. So, and this for me actually put a lot of things in perspective. One, I realized that I was so calm through the whole process, in the sense that I actually sent very dispassionate emails to people saying, if I die, please do this. So for example, our friend Sudhir, I sent him emails saying that, look, the Seen and the Unseen is hosted on Libsyn. You have to keep paying a monthly or it goes off. Here's my username, password. Either you keep paying, which I know he would do, or you transfer the archives to whatever. I wrote to Gaurav about what to do with the banked episodes, and wrote to loved ones, put everything kind of into place, and I was very calm about that. And I was sort of a little surprised at that. And then I thought that, okay, if shit happens, and obviously the danger from something like a stent thing is like very, very minute. It's 1 to 2%. In fact, anytime you go under anesthesia is 1 to 2% mortality, which I didn't know, something like that, which is scary. And then I thought that, okay, it's not a terrible way, it's not terrible to go now, but I would regret things, and what I would regret is the goals. What I would regret very specifically, as both of you would know, is not writing the books that have been inside me for years and years and years, because I've procrastinated and simply never done them. And that thought came to me, and I said, if only I had done those, I would have, it would be easier for me. And then obviously when it got over, I realized that, okay, let me get those done. And the only way to do those is, of course, by putting processes in place. You don't write a book by sitting down and just, writing one day. You write a book by building a writing habit. And then within that writing habit, you fix that particular goal and things fall into place. And this also made me think about an intellectual framework that I had adopted for myself, which I hadn't completely internalized. I've spoken about it on the show a lot with Shruti on episode 400, for example. How you spend your days is how you spend your lives. It's a quote by Annie Dillard, where I was sort of imprisoned in the toxic framework of always chasing goals when I was younger. कि किताब लिखेंगे, प्राइज जीतेंगे, ये होगा, claim मिलेगा, fame मिलेगा, blah blah blah, all of that shit. And that is deeply toxic, and it's also, I think, males fall for it more, and it's deeply toxic because it's a part to unhappiness. You're never unhappy. Every goal you achieve, there's another goal down the road. And what I realized is, rather than goals, you have to build habits. That, any writing goal you would have, like write a book or write a Substack or whatever, if you build a writing habit, that gets taken care of. If you build a running habit, a goal of running a marathon is taken care of, a goal towards fitness is taken care of, etc., etc. So I'd internalized that how you spend your days is how you spend your lives. Build the perfect day, do good things, processes, habits. I'd internalized that. Intellectually, I got that. But still, there was a part of me which wanted to write these books. Partly because I felt that there's just one thing I've been born to do, which is write fiction, and I haven't shown that to the world. I wrote a shitty book a long time back, but I need to I need to do it because I love doing it. I need to do it because I know I can do it very well, not necessarily for the acclaim of the world. So that's part of where I am, and that's part of my priority and why I'm freeing up time in various ways to do that. The other framework I got for myself is a 2-chapter story. Have I told you guys my theory of optimistic nihilism?
No.
I haven't. So, listeners who might have heard it perhaps on Everything is Everything, please forgive me. I'm so happy about it. I keep talking about it. It has 2 chapters, right? And this really started when a friend sent me a video with the video had the title Optimistic Nihilism, and I never clicked on it. I just thought for myself, what could it mean? So I have my own theory of what it is. So chapter 1 is called My Driving License, right? My driving license expired in 2023. Now, I am Bengali, and you need to get up, find an agent, go through a 14-day process. So I never bothered to get it renewed. Also thinking that, hey, if someone stops me, manage kar lenge, jugaad ho jayega.
Oh, you're still driving without a license.
But right now, my friend Naren Shenoy, when he heard this, was so horrified, he put an agent on the job. So that's getting sorted out as we speak. But for the last 2.5 years, I've driven without a license. So now what happened was, one day I was driving in Bombay, and this is actually a true story, right? One day I was driving in Bombay, and the signal was turning from green to yellow. And obviously, like any good citizen, though Shruti says that for Amit's traffic lights are a suggestion, but this was during the day. After midnight, of course, they are optional. But this was during the day in Bombay. This was during the day, and the traffic light went to yellow. And like any good citizen, my foot went towards the brake when a thought struck me, and that thought was this: I don't have a license. This means I am outside the law. This means that I don't have to care about the law. The law doesn't apply to me. So I broke the signal and went ahead, and one person on the road just glared at me for doing this, and I glared back. And in my mind, I thought, deleted word, which I can't use, but I thought that deleted word. I thought, deleted word, you have a license. You have to follow the laws. I don't have a license. This doesn't apply to me. And it's so liberating in that case. Now, this is a joke story. I would urge you, Pranay, with your male rational brain, not to try to break this down and say, no, Amit, but.
Yeah.
Right? My plea to you is bhavna is samjho. Right? So you have samjhod the bhavna, and we can go on to chapter 2. Chapter 2, Optimistic Nihilism, is this. And you could say that my heart attack brought me closer to this conclusion. Chapter 2 is that we are all going to die and life is meaningless. And this is a phenomenally liberating thought, because the moment you come to terms with it, nothing can make you sad, nothing can stress you out. You know, everything pales in front of the fact that I am going to die, you are going to die, the 3 of us will be dead one day, and someone will listen to this podcast and they'll be like, ek baar to inhone future foretell kiya, because we're all going to die. Life is meaningless, and therefore you can follow your heart. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about what other people think of you. You don't have to worry about failure. You don't have to worry about falling flat on your face or on your bum, etc., etc. And that's very liberating. And I want to carry that thought with me for the rest of my life, because, of course, you know, all of us have experienced the harsh truths of life. We've experienced grief in various forms. We've experienced betrayal. We've, you know, in our mind, Santa Clauses have been dying from the times the original Santa Claus died. And it's all okay. Life is incredible. You can make yourself happy in the next moment. You know what to do. So I'm sounding very much like a self-help guru at this point in time, so I'll stop. But
I have one point where I disagree with you. I mean, the fact that we're all mortal is obvious. But I don't think, I would actually flip it the other way. Life is meaningful and we're going to die. And just because we're going to die doesn't make it meaningless. Right? It's the mortality which makes us confront whether we lived a life full of meaning. But
what is
why
meaning?
should that be?
You can live a life full of happiness, but what is meaning?
That's what I'm saying. The meaning question comes up only when we are confronted with our mortality. So I'm saying just ignore that last one day. Every other day you've had a life of meaning. No. So life is very meaningful until you are confronted with your mortality, and unfortunately don't die that day.
Maybe it depends on how you define meaning, but I find meaning so nebulous to define itself, the word itself, not a specific meaning.
Meaning is in all the little things.
I think happiness can be in all the little things if you are intentional about it.
Even meaning. You know, people are intentional about things that they don't think they should be intentional about. They think they have to be intentional about all these big picture things. Right? I mean, just think about all our mums and the way we were raised, or our grandmothers. They were so intentional about every meal being exactly right. Now my sister and I joke that we're turning into our parents because I want my coffee at a temperature that I used to make fun of them about wanting their coffee at a particular temperature, right? Khana, if it's not like scalding hot, is what is this thanda tepid khana type. So but they were so intentional about those little things because they wanted their family to have like that meal should be the best meal that they've had. I've had so many arguments with my mom that, come on, every roti does not need to be made fresh and brought to the table. Like, what is all this craziness? But as I get older, I kind of see why my grandmother or my mother or my dad will still not forget sending someone to pick veg. He goes still to the fruit and vegetable market, has to touch every quinoa and every apple and bring it. But that is meaning for him.
So what have you learned from them?
From my parents? My parents are incredibly kind people, and that did not transfer genetically. So the older I get, the more I realize that it's less important to be right and more important to be kind.
I guess meaning, one sense could also be that too much of meaning could lead to self-importance being
Or
heightened.
paralysis.
And that is what I guess we need to avoid, right?
Kind of. I mean, yeah, because you're right, that you can begin to take yourself too seriously and you can talk about your purpose and you can grandiosely say, I'm playing the long game for the nation, which we sometimes do. And you can say all of those things. But at the end of the day, it's, I think one of the things you also need to learn is to learn to take yourself less seriously.
Yeah, people take themselves very seriously, yeah. And I have no idea why. And they're not even taking their actual self more seriously. They're taking a version of themselves they wish to project to the world very seriously. It's a double fault in my mind. I'm like, please chill.
Is it a Pranay, do you think it's a vicious cycle come a virtuous cycle kind of problem, that if you are given to self-reflection and you can get past taking yourself seriously, then you are always in that self-reflective mode and you become a different person over time. But if you take yourself too seriously, then self-reflection is dangerous because you will realize inevitably that you're broken and you're flawed in a million different ways, and therefore you never self-reflect and you get ossified into what you want to project, as Shruti said. And what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking, see, some form of self-reflection is desirable. We want to do that. How else do you improve, right? But what do you reflect on is what matters. So if you're reflecting, if your views are hardened and you're saying this is the view that and a performative self is what you want to protect, that becomes problem. But if you are self-reflecting about your processes, about what you said, intentionality, then it is great, right? So in that sense, it is a vicious cycle if your self-reflection is on the goals, etc. But if your self-reflection is on the small little things, processes, I think it's great.
Tell us about your year.
Yeah, so I do make lists. I still make lists.
That's why he gets so much done.
Every year I do.
We are just as a hawa mein beh rahe hain hum.
I am hawa mein beh rahe hai. You are doing a lot of
no, so I do make lists. Many of, I mean, those lists never come true, but for me they serve as a process. I do check at the year end that, okay, how did I achieve? I also have some regular checks in between the year just to take a measure of how am I doing. And all this is on Obsidian. So there is a hidden folder on Obsidian on which all this goes.
Sorry to interrupt, but can you give us an example of what might end up on your different lists?
So essentially there will be some personal goals, some professional goals, and this gets updated on a yearly basis. So I will tell you some of the personal goals where I've been successful and not successful at all. One of the things this year was I want to get rid of the phone addiction. So this I had put, and through the year I was making some notes on what does this phone addiction mean, and I realized
I want to pause here and say Pranay is saying this as he stares at his phone.
Yeah,
and looks at his notes, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, but that is a literal phone and not the metaphorical phone he means, which is the distractions that lie within the phone.
Yes. So this is focused. This is the Obsidian note I'm checking to be able to present my views here. Yeah. But so the phone addiction bit was again, I was trying to understand understand why is it coming from, right? And it's not because of particular apps or a certain thing. It's just out of stress or out of boredom, or when you reach to the phone. So when you're so at least the way to get rid of that addiction is when you start feeling that the phone itself is boring, and then you will not reach out to it. So I have tried various things through the year. I tried this minimalist app which warns me and all that, but again it was after a point of time it started becoming a barrier, because you need to access WhatsApp sometimes, some OTP comes there or some other message, or sometimes I missed important messages and I got a good scolding for that. So because of that, what I got rid of minimalist phone, and then I've started trying to be conscious about it, but I have still not been successful. So this phone addiction part I really want to get rid of, but I have not been successful. How do you guys manage this? This is my first point. I'll come to the next one, but
I don't manage it. I have embraced it. My team jokes that at any point I have 30 tabs open in my brain, and it's just, we're all multitasking all the time, right? I mean, right now we're podcasting, but there is going to be stuff that gets interrupted. You have children, I have aging parents, texts will come. Like, we just need to be on top of it. And I've realized that I'm not at a point in my life where I can do that. I just carve out certain times of the day when I do my best to keep my phone away, but it's not a phone-free zone. And I feel like the more productive I am, the less I will be stressed about my phone. So now I'm just channeling it differently. It's not about my phone anymore. And I'm very productive on my phone, actually.
I've been coping with it very badly. I have the same aim, though I never wrote it down in a list, but I haven't managed to make any progress towards cutting down on looking at my phone. And I have a follow-up question for both of you, which I'll ask after you've done with your list, but it's kind of slightly related to this.
All right. So the other thing I had this year was to exercise 200 days of the year. I didn't even hit 50, I think, but the aim was there.
50
I
is
have an
better than
update
0.
on 1st October, far behind this target, definitely worsened, but that didn't lead to any changes. But yeah, I think that has been one thing I've not been able to keep up with. Just too many other things happening. So somehow prioritizing health hasn't happened. So that was one realization.
So you're speaking of health, that reminded me during the heart attack anecdote, something I should have mentioned is that Lancelot told me that after you get a viral infection, the chances of getting a heart incident actually go up by a huge amount, like by many multiples. And my cardiologist told me that there was at least a 30% chance that the entire heart thing, including the blockages, were caused by some viral thing, which is why it took me so much by surprise, because I had never had heart issues, so did not expect that the tightening would be a hard thing. And that made me realize that you have to also, like what I say about putting processes in place, that is most super important for the health. That you can't wait for a massive incident to happen and then you say that, okay, I'm going to sort it out. You've got to have regular habits in place. Like with me, what has happened is I got diabetes once. I reversed it through diet and a little exercise, which I did an episode of Everything is Everything about. And then I lapsed back because I was so freaking lazy and had a lot of biryani and etc. And then I reversed it again. But I'm like, that's not a way to live. That why are you always sprinting towards solving a problem rather than just living the kind of healthy lifestyle you should, which basically means as less sugar as possible and intermittent fasting in my case. But the question I wanted to ask, taking on from the phone thing where you were speaking about the different apps that you've tried to use to cut down on the addiction, is that what has been the role of technology in getting to the best version of yourself? Right? Like I love technology because in so many different ways, it helps me get to the best version of myself. For example, Rome research has made it so much easier to organize knowledge and to organize thoughts in my head. And I've actually shared the way I use my Rome research in 2 episodes of Everything is Everything, which are episode 49, The Art of Podcasting, and episode 120, I think, The Art of Reading. And in both of them, I've screen shared and done that. But with the nested entries and the bidirectional linking, it's so easy to organize my thoughts. And I feel that has brought me closer to being the best version of myself. And equally, I have to be honest and say technology has also taken me closer to being the worst version of myself, whether it is in scrolling, swiping to, to just pass time and get dopamine hits, or to use AI to generate either erotica or porn, which it is very good at doing. And I don't mind confessing that I've spent a lot of time doing that as well. Though erotic stories are an art form in themselves, and I can elaborate at some other point. But I don't use AI for any other writing or creative pursuit. It is almost like an addiction that tech has been useful for. This I have to mitigate, stop using the tech which caters to the worst version of myself, and start using more tech like Rome Research or a lot of the other stuff that I do, which helps me become the best version of myself. So in your case, what role has tech played in your personal lives?
So, before we get to the tech for a minute, this is the first year I've actually met my health goals, which were not goals. So I'll tell you what the goal was. 4 days a week, go down to the basement and open your yoga mat. And that's it. That is it. I have to go down and open my yoga mat, which basically means like 5 minutes of stretching. And I figured out that if I'm there, I'll do something. Right? I mean, I have bad shoulders. I've had shoulder surgery. So, I'll typically start with shoulder stuff because it's physical therapy / strength building and all. And some days are good. And I'll actually end up working out like a serious person. And some days are rubbish. And I can't wait for the 5-minute clock to run out and just stretch my shoulders and leave. Very few such days though. That's what I've realized. If I just set the goal small enough that, between my coffee and starting the day, I just need to go stretch for 5 minutes. But it's a time and a place and a thing. It's of all the things I have tried over the years, this is literally the only thing that has worked out. And I'm now able to do this anywhere. I'm traveling. I'm able to do this in a hotel room. I have a foldable yoga mat and it collapses into like a tiny thing. And it just works. It's a time, place thing, and I'm done. So I recommend, my recommendation on that is not that you shouldn't have goals. My recommendation is be kind to yourself, right? We lead stressful lives. We're all very high functioning people, which I didn't know before. I used to think I'm terrible. But now looking at other people, I'm like, oh, we're high functioning people. And high functioning people automatically have just very high expectations of themselves, which means we really berate ourselves if we miss a day or whatever it is. And if you just set the goals really small, it's the same thing with the writing. Just be kind to yourself and I think you will get better. So I would say just reverse the goal. Instead of saying I need to exercise for 200 days, just say I need to do 5 minutes of something every day or 4 days a week and then go from there.
I want to stay on this thought for a moment before we get to the tech question, that if I'm to extrapolate from this and say that this principle can be taken to anything you want to do, I will often tell my writing students, write 200 words a day. That's it. 200 words is how much we speak in a minute, easy to do on your smartphone, no matter how busy you are. What other things could this principle apply to? Like in exercise, it is open your yoga mat. In writing, 200 word likh lo, phone pe bhi likh lo, chalega. What other things do?
Cooking comes only with practice, right? And a lot of times, like my husband who doesn't cook every day, but he cooks pretty well. He's like, how do you get everything to be so consistent every time? And I'm like, because I'm doing it all the time, then now I don't have to think about it. But the first time I made a dosa, I had to like really think perfectly how to make it. Now it's muscle memory, right? So think about, I don't need to cook perfectly, but I'm going to make myself a small breakfast or whatever it is. Like, it could be a tiny thing. It could be the perfect sandwich. It's not easy to make a good sandwich, by the way. So, but it takes only 5, 7, 10 minutes. So I think that would be one. People routinely ask me, typically podcast listeners and young people, how do you speak fluently? Just record yourself on ChatGPT and say where were the ums and ahs and just point them out to me. And you'll learn.
That's too deliberate. I would never do that. I would just say that the more you write and the more you speak, it'll automatically get better.
No, true. But I'm saying some people are very self-conscious about it, right? Some people very nervous about how they sound.
But they'll get more self-conscious if they know where
I'm saying don't hear how you sound. Transcribe it. So you can tell ChatGPT in the audio version, you can just say include the ums and ahs and highlight them in bold. And it'll highlight them in bold. And then you'll know how much you're doing. And then the next time you get a little bit.
This is really interesting because it's the opposite advice that I would give. I mean, it's very good advice for somebody like you, but for somebody like me, I'd just give the opposite advice and say that this would make me more self-conscious if I tried to do this. And the only trick is that you write a lot and you speak a lot. But
that is, of course, anyway a trick. But a lot of these young people don't get opportunities to speak a lot the way we did. Right? I've been teaching for such a long part of my life that I got paid to speak every day for n number of hours. So I think when you're 15 and you're very self-conscious and you're worried about flubbing and the expectation because of social media is Shruti and Amit speak in full sentences and paragraphs for 4 hours. That's basically where the problem is. So my thing is, do the things that make you less self-conscious. So I think writing, speaking, music, of course. Tyler Cowen always asks me the question, what is the equivalent of scales? Doing your scales or doing your riyas every day in your business, right? So if you want to become a better speaker, what is the equivalent of that? If you want to be a better writer, what's the equivalent of that? And
Riyaz.
Huh?
It is Riyaz.
Yeah, riyas, like doing scales, right? Even today, my mom will do her scales. Every musician does their scales. It's just what you do, right?
What is the equivalent of riyaz in other things, for example?
Writing. So I got this lesson from you and Prem, which is don't obsess over academic or book writing or what is on deadline. That day, if you don't feel like writing about it, just write about whatever you feel like writing about and be kind to yourself. And even that makes you a better writer. So I still feel like the process is really important, but the expectations need to be lower and kinder. You can't get upset that, I have this huge deadline for this policy paper I need to present day after tomorrow. And abhi agar nahi hai mood, now what are you going to do? You're going to shoot yourself over it. Like, do you know what I mean?
I have an equivalent of that. So it can apply to many things. One is read a page a day.
Yeah.
Even on writing, I would say the bar is even lower. For me, what I have said is I always check how many notes I have made. Like notes can even be 2 lines or 1 line, but just the fact that, okay, and at the end of the week, generally I measure myself by saying, okay, how many, because those notes will generally be of ideas or something which I have heard and I want to check it later on. But just the fact that I have written even 2 words says that, okay, this week I have thought about 5 new things or I have got information about 5 new things, which is quite makes me happy. And the weeks in which there is nothing, it makes me think, okay, maybe some things didn't work well in that week. I think that might apply even to personal things, right? Even if you could spend 5 minutes talking to your loved ones in a day, or call your mom or dad or whoever, that sort of applies.
So at this point, I should mention that, I got Pranay into this little WhatsApp group we have of a handful of people called Satisfaction Index, which is now dead because no one bothers to post there. But so I just had the idea that every day we keep ourselves accountable and we rank how satisfied we are with the day on a scale of 1 to 10, not with concrete metrics and productivity obsession and all that, but just how do we feel? At least that was my idea. That I'll just, like on a day when I've recorded a podcast, I'll give myself 10 out of 10 no matter what else happens, because I just feel like, wow, I did this, and so on and so forth. And Sudhir Sarnobat did this really beautiful thing, which is such a great lesson for all of us, right? He created an Excel sheet, and in that, across personal goals, work goals, etc., he created a bunch of things which he gave like 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, but they added up to much more than 10. But he said 10 is a max you can do, and a couple of them are mandatory. Some of those goals are a lesson, like, because Pranay said speak to a loved one for 5 minutes. So one of them was that every day call a loved one, somebody from the family, and speak for 5 minutes. Every week spend half an hour with somebody you have never met before, right? And there were a bunch of those, and I just looked at that and I thought ki, oh my god, like another mutual friend and guest here, Naren Shenoy, and I, we often say about Sudhi that, man, if we had his force of will and intentionality, hum kahan pahunch jate. Sudhir is just on a different planet and just so inspiring. So,
and wears it so lightly. That's one of my favorite things about him. I don't know him anywhere close to as well as you. I just met him. But he's very warm, very intentional, very particular about how he does things, especially for other people, but just wears it so lightly. You will not know any of this about him unless you were on this secret WhatsApp group where he shared the spreadsheet. I love that. And he's mentored so many of the people he met. And he was just, I told him, I said, what's your favorite thing? He said, Shruti, I have to come back to EV Unconference every year. And I said, why? He said, I just need to meet these people and help them become what they want to become.
Wow.
And that's just the person he is. And he's like, I am leaving filled with hope. And he's leaving filled with hope, not because his project is getting better. He's leaving filled with hope because other people are doing so well. He's just that kind of guy, right? So he's so he's the warmest, loveliest person. I have a segue. I don't know if this is the right time to take the segue, but you were talking about how spend 5 minutes talking to a loved one. I realized only this year, and part of the realization came from a conversation Amit and I had over a couple of different phone calls, that women are very different than men in how they approach friendships and conversation.
Mhm.
I mean, the talk to a loved one every day is like in my bones, in some sense. Like, whether it's my sister, my closest friends, and I've also been intentional about it. I'm an immigrant. I'm not where my family is. I'm not where my closest friends are. I don't live in the city I grew up in. I'm not where my in laws are. So I do live with my husband, who's a loved one. But other than that, immediately, like, I'm not living in a joint family and stuff like that. So I've always had to be intentional about time difference and making sure I make time to call the other person. One of my closest childhood friends, at one point, she was in Australia and I was in the United States. And the only non-teaching day I had was Thursday when I was in New York. So every Thursday morning, we had a fixed call for like years on end. And if you do it all the time, it takes 15 minutes, no? Now you just need to catch up for 15 minutes. It's not a 3-hour phone call every Thursday. So it becomes very doable. I send postcards, so I'm very good about that. And okay, so here's the embarrassing portion of the revelation that happened with Amit and my husband Nandu and other people. Apparently, men don't have these inconsequential conversations that women have with each other every day. And I didn't know that because the men in my life have them with me. But I didn't know that they don't always have them with each other. So, with my sister and my close friend, in the same conversation, it's like, oh, what are you making for dinner? Or like what's happening with the parents and some serious hospitalization issue, or like, what's happening with my friend's kid who's my nephew and godson and uska school ka admission hua. And meanwhile, you're like, hey, tell me how to make this. And that annoying person at work, I was telling her, we do this in a matter of 15 minutes in the middle of calls or when she's in her commute. I didn't know men don't do this.
Yeah. There's a meme for that, right? Like,
Okay.
so when men are like talking, after 5 or 10 minutes, the conversation invariably ends in, "Aur bata kya chal raha hai? Aur
Even for
bata
us.
kya chal raha hai?" Or no, but there's nothing to add.
So I've thought a lot about this since I had a conversation with Shruti. We had a couple of phone conversations where we were just talking about this, and I've done a couple of episodes of Everything is Everything, which in a sense come off of this. One is what men and women want, and another is this episode I'm very proud of on human sexuality, where we speak about how men and women are hardwired so differently. And the truth is that I had an episode of The Seen and the Unseen with Kavita Rao where she made the point that if she asks her husband what time is your flight landing, he'll give the time. If she asks a female friend, she'll say, oh, she'll give the time, and then she'll say, oh, by the way, I was sitting in the aisle seat and middle seat, this person was there, and there'll be some more talk. That men talk often for instrumental reasons and women talk for connection and for sharing stories and all of that, and there are deeper reasons behind that which are not proximate causation, but ultimate causation goes back to eventually everything goes back to sex. But and here, I think that because I have learned that it is beautiful to use conversation as connection and to share stories and to get to know other people. Another friend of mine, Shefali Bhatt, introduced me to this great phrase, low dropping. Where you basically you meet
Lore,
someone
like L-O-R-E.
L-O-R-E, load dropping, or it was some phrase with lore, so I don't even remember the phrase correctly. But
Lore bombing
lore
is what
bombing.
you told me.
Lore bombing is what I told you, right? So lore bombing, and I love that phrase. And I've never done that with a male friend. Like I've often done an episode of The Seen and the Unseen with a male friend, and then figured out at the end of it that I've known this guy for 20 years, but I didn't know them at all. Because during the episode, I'll ask all those personal questions about parents and growing up and knowing your mom and all that, which would never come up in a male-to-male conversation, but often will in a female-to-female conversation.
And a female-to-male.
Yeah. If the female is kind of driving it. But
I don't know. Yeah, the reason I didn't know this, the first part of my life is all very women-heavy, right? So I went to an all-girls school. All my sister, my cousins, everyone. I have one male cousin, poor guy. Everyone else is a woman in the family. And the second half of my life is one of economics, which is really male heavy. So most of my close friends, especially those I knew through work and know through work, are all men. All my mentors are men and so on. And I'm very close to them. So they talk like this with me the same way my female friends do. Maybe they're not telling me what they're eating or what they're, cooking, but I know. But I didn't know they don't talk like this to each other. That was the revelation for me. So this is a weird.
Yeah. So my point being that A, men are not hardwired for this to anywhere near the same extent women are. And B, it is okay. Because the thing about our hardwiring is once we know it, we can either mitigate or amplify it. And we can mitigate this by making intentional efforts to have those kind of conversations. So, frankly, all my conversations with my good male friends are also very rewarding because we can talk about this stuff now. And when you realize how rewarding it is to do lore bombing, as it were, then then life is great.
No, and I love knowing the little nonsense things. I don't know why. And people love telling me also. So
This is a good time to talk about gossip because, gentle listeners, a few days ago, for the first time in our 18 years, in our first year of almost 2 decade friendship with Shruti, we actually gossiped a little bit, and she was like, "My God, this is the first time I'm gossiping with you," because she's not a gossip person and neither am I.
it is
And
awesome.
Yeah. So,
Gossip, the glue that holds society
yeah. So, what do you
together.
guys think about gossip?
Yeah, okay, so I gossip with my close friends, but usually it's about other friends. It's like, oh my God, this person did this and they irritated me. We'll also gossip about, so, like I said, the thick friendship thing. I know about my closest friends and their bosses, and if someone's a terrible boss or some horrible coworker, and she'll be like, guess what this one did again today. So these are people I haven't even met. But I love gossiping about them. So part of it is lore bombing. Part of it is obviously gossiping about a complete stranger. Right? I love gossiping about complete strangers because then there is no guilt also associated with gossiping or saying something nasty about someone else. But most people don't gossip with me, huh? They think I'm very serious. They come and tell me about books and ideas. No, people, I want gossip. Please tell me gossip. If it's about strangers, even better.
See, my intellectual position on this has been that it is toxic to say bad things about other people, and therefore I try never to do that. That's my intellectual position. But at the same time, if I'm gossiping with you about something, is also a way of you and I connecting in a way, and so I don't know.
I have a follow-up. Why is it toxic to say nasty things about other people? Lots of times people are nasty.
No, you want to take your mind away from negativity, right? What do you think, Pranay?
Yeah, I mean, better to say that in front of them.
Yeah.
Instead of, that's all right.
Try stopping.
Yeah, but I have realized I don't gossip, but some of my friends, one of my friends is really good at this. So I have seen there is some vicarious pleasure. So whenever he says some things, I do remember those details. He's told me about some third person. So obviously I am enjoying that because I remember that. Then 2 years later I go and ask him, "Oh, uska kya hua? वो तूने ऐसे बताया था." So that means there is some innate likeness towards that, but I try to avoid it.
What's your take on male friendships?
Oh, the same thing. I think there is very little of that unstructured conversation which happens somehow, and that leads to generally when you're talking it becomes very superficial, and you are not able to go to the depth after a point.
Let me ask you a question. Yesterday, you and I recorded an episode with Nitin, which would have released before this one. And Nitin and you have known each other very closely for about 12 years now. You did the GCPP course and then you worked here. You meet almost every day. You talk pretty much every day. What is that friendship like? Like, how well do you think he knows you in a personal sense and what's happening in the family and what your childhood was like and vice versa?
Yeah, I think with some people it would be because you're meeting them on a daily basis and there's a comfort level that the person will know it pretty well. So I think Nitin will know a lot of the things that I've been up to, and because so many conversations happen over the office lunch table or others which will be there. But the set of people, it is determined by circumstance more than anything else. So I think if both of us are not at the same place, for example, I think that will drift away. For example, some of my friends in college with whom I was like in a similar friendship, right, where they will know a lot of the things that I've been up to, but now that they are not on we are not meeting on a regular basis, the phone calls are all really terrible. I am terrible at phone calls because we didn't have a phone for the longest period of time. I used to live in a township, no phone, so I never understood how to use the phone for a call. So even today my phone etiquette and just calling, I don't get that when people say ऐसे ही बात करना है. So it's just so once you're not doing that and you can't meet a person on a regular basis, then it quickly tapers down and you will again become very distant. So it's circumstantial, I guess.
Can I give unsolicited advice? Okay, so couple of things, okay? I hate talking on the phone except to very few people. Like a tiny subset of people in the world are the ones I like talking to regularly. Most people, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you guys once every few months, but mostly that's true. But I think you guys are again taking the whole enterprise very seriously. So I'll give you an example of something that happened very recently. I just landed in India. A friend of mine was from work was flying and just texted me and said, our favorite song just showed up in a movie. Okay. It's a Harry Nilsson song. I guess the Lord must be in New York City. And I was like, which movie? Because the first time I heard it was in a movie called You've Got Mail. It's in The Materialists, apparently. I haven't watched the movie yet. But it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can just be I heard something and I thought of you, and you don't have to pick up the phone and call that person. And I think this is what women are slightly better at doing and men are not as good at doing. So my call to action to all the lovely gentlemen listeners, including the one sitting in front of me, just link bomb and meme bomb. And I thought of you in this instance, bomb people who are important to you. That's it. My way, people joke, my team jokes actually, that my love language is just sending them links. You need to read this, thought you would like this, thought you would be interested. I read so much through the day, I'm like spreading links all over, right? Tyler does the same thing with all of us. Like, you know, as soon as he reads something he thinks is relevant to one of us, he'll just immediately share it or pass it on. And it's such a simple thing and people value it so much. So whatever it is that you do, I'm saying just link bomb, meme bomb. My sister and I at this point, I think I'm only talking through Instagram memes daily.
I actually do this a lot, and what's interesting here is that different strokes for different folks. In the sense, Shefali, who I mentioned earlier, most of our WhatsApp messages are sharing puns, because I know she's into puns, she knows I'm into puns, everybody else hates them. So every time, so she's my pun pal, as I say. So yeah, and
I love it.
Meta.
Very meta.
and she's even better at the puns than I am. So every time I come across some meme with a pun in it, I'll send it to her and whatever, and that's nice. And you know, to Sudhir and Naren, we're part of a group. I'll send a different bunch of things, and you know, I should start sending Pranay some links every day now. Yeah,
No, but it doesn't have to be every day.
Yeah, this is the Riyaz equivalent for keeping in touch.
Actually, because
and the postcard thing, you know, the thing I've realized is I've been sending postcards for God knows how many years at this point. You guys have received postcards from me. People just love it so much. And it's 3 points of connection, right? I mean, sometimes I'll ask for an address or I'll be writing the postcard, and I'm very old fashioned on my phone. I have everyone's snail mail address at any given point in time, because when I'm traveling, I'll get it. So if I'm writing to you and I've never written to you before, I'll think about you. I will write the card. I'll ask for your address. So that's one point of connection. The second point of connection is when people receive it, they literally take a picture and send it to me on WhatsApp or whatever. It's like, oh my God, I got your postcard and it thrilled me no end, and we talked about it at home. And then when they travel, I'm the one person that they send a postcard to. They don't send 40 postcards like me. So now that one thing has become 3 points of connection over a period of time. And people send me postcards now, yeah? I mean, I send way more postcards than I receive, but that's because I love sending them. But I also love receiving them, and it's a great way of staying in touch. And now I know people, you know, where they went on vacation, or they had a baby, or, you know, oh, I met a great dog that looks just like Cole in Ireland, and someone will write me a postcard about that. It's really lovely. It's a joy in my life.
And the thing about that is that when you send something like that, whether it's a physical postcard or a link or whatever, it is not so much that you have sent that particular thing which they may like or may be useful to them. It is that in that moment you're also saying, I thought of you.
Exactly. That's all it is.
That's great.
It really is. I just thought of you. So much of the thick friendship thing I was telling you about, it's about forming a human connection. So, you know, when you say I've drifted away from my friends, and having that big conversation on the phone is almost impossible and we don't meet that often, you don't need to make it a big deal. I think men think that a relationship means a certain thing. And I think men think of relationship very much as obligation. I owe it to this person to share meaningful, substantive things, right? To then prove to myself and him that this is a close friendship or whatever. But life is in the little things. The way you describe the relationship with Nitin is so lovely, right? It's like, you said it's circumstantial. I would say it's the opposite. It's like, it's the everyday little nothing things that actually add up to the big thing, which is being really close friends.
And, going back to what you said about men thinking that communication is an obligation, I think one of the things that I realized recently, and I was sharing this with you, is that when I think of all my close friends, I can't remember when I fought with them. Like ever. And the reason for that, and the reason I think friendship is the most beautiful of all relationships, is that it comes without expectations or entitlements. So you're not going to be let down by a friend in any situation because you really don't have too much of expectation or whatever. And for me, therefore, I have realized that if you want to build a web of relationships, let friendship be the GPT, the general purpose technology, and let everything emerge out of that. Love, romance, friendship, all of that can emerge, sex can emerge out of that. But if friendship is the GPT, if that is a solid foundation, then I think you're safe, because friendship comes without expectations and entitlements. It's just the most beautiful thing. So that's my sort of thinking aloud kind of thought.
I have very high expectations from human beings in general. I know that's a little bit intimidating for other people, but I expect my friends to be wonderful to me. And by that, I don't mean main hu and they have to be great to me all the time. But I do have expectations that they will be good, kind, decent people and they will treat themselves well and so on. When Amit got his heart attack, I was more furious at him and I was more like falling apart than he was. He was very calm. I got some long voice note, which 3 times in the voice note said, but I love you, but don't worry, but I love you. And I'm like, dude, I'm falling apart. It was 5 a.m. when I woke up in New York and I got the voice note. So yeah, so I do have expectations from my friends not to do stupid things like have heart attacks and not know about it.
Did I say but I love you? I don't say these things.
Not but you did say I love you.
Okay. I do.
You do love me.
Yeah,
I know.
All my friends. You and Pranay.
Yeah. Please look into his eyes and say it now.
No, I'll do that happily. Pranay, I love you. Yeah, it's not a problem for me.
Pranay is going red.
Pranay is going fully red, and you're locked in the room with me and Shruti.
Yeah, I think this is. I don't think there's escape without telling us how much you love us.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us.
I love you guys too.
A lot of pressure, I think.
You are very sincere.
Yeah, no,
I am.
He is very sincere. Let's get back to the tech question after this delightful digression. Tell me about the tech that's helped you become a better version of yourself, or that, to your regret, as a couple of cases in mind, helped you be a worse version of you.
I'll begin. So, yeah, I think for me, the tech is pretty much associated with the phone, right? So obviously, one way which it has made me worse, I'll begin there, is you are distracted all the time, right? Or sometimes I realize when my son is talking to me and I'm not in that moment. So that is a realization that the things are not good. So that time, now I've started keeping my phone away. I was doing that earlier also. After 9 p.m. I generally keep it in a different room, and that helped me. But couple of months I have not been following that. So that's one thing. So it's more about having something close to you and you just drift away in that. So that's one thing. Things that have helped me, quite a few of them. So this year, I think for me, the Substack app has been really helpful. Earlier, my reading was through Feedbin, so generally RSS feeds. But I realized the things that Substack was recommending to me, I invariably ended up reading them, because somehow the algorithm is working for me thus far, and it recommends things which I actually want to read, and they are generally good. So the Substack app has been good. I think LLMs have been using in one way or the other has been useful, just increasing productivity. Just like last week, I was trying to do this one thing. I have always wanted to read official sources from China on science and tech and others, but it was just too tough to do that, because they intentionally put it in a way which is difficult for you to read, because of the way the party state is structured. So you can read some nice things which are meant for the others, for the outsiders, and in English, but the ones which they talk to the bureaucratic officials lower down, that is made difficult to read. So with these LLMs, I was able to so I know basics of Python, I can use terminal, but beyond that I don't. But within 3-4 hours I was able to write a code Gemini was able to write a code. I was able to prompt it, improve it, which is able to give outputs of 4 newspapers. You click a button, it's a GUI. You click a button, it will extract the entire newspapers, translate it in English, give you the links with the photos in a PDF in 5 minutes.
Wow.
So I'm going to put it on GitHub and others can use it. So these kinds of things are really fun. Another thing we tried to do is, and we like open source text, right? So generally it's a great thing. So again, using LLMs, we were able to write code for essentially anyone. Our website completely, the Akshila website is on open source. There's no WordPress like CMS. It's so again, there was some code which I was trying to convert a text file, an Obsidian file, into a PowerPoint presentation completely using open source software. That also it was able to do. So that was great fun. The fact that you are able to create something and then put it out into the open for others to use. So Obsidian, for example, has plugins. So I again don't know the coding, but the LLM was able to create the plugin, and I submitted the plugin to the Obsidian GitHub, which was like, wow. At the age of 40, I have submitted a plugin on GitHub is made me very happy. Yeah. So those things made me happy. Yeah.
Yeah, the LLMs have been transformational for me. And I didn't think they would be. I didn't think I would take to them because I'm not a very tech savvy person at all. I use them for everything, yeah. I mean, now it's almost reached a point of embarrassment where I just say, ask chat and it will tell you what to do. I have realized, so earlier I used to think about it as, oh, it's a good editor. Right? Then someone told me a use case that, if you have 4 ingredients in your fridge, you can just take a picture and it'll tell you what are the various things you could make with it. That kind of stuff is very useful, actually. It'll give you multiple recipes, or it'll say this is the best recipe for something. It's great for translation. So I can't read or write Tamil, so it's very useful for translation, transliteration. So I'm able to think about my personal life and multiple interests in original language, which I could never do before. So it's great, So I always thought of it as, oh, it's great. It'll be good for research and it'll help me write better. But it's actually amazing for a lot of things. But one thing I've used it for, and in more recent times, is to be kinder. And it's a very good partner for someone like me. So, earlier I was telling you about how now as I get older, I think it's more important to be kind than to be right. But it's very difficult to be kind if you don't think you're being unkind, right? Because most of the times I'm so filterless and blunt. I just think I'm telling you the truth, and my way of showing love and respect is I owe you the truth. So I have to give you the most unvarnished version. So my way of being kind to other people is what I wish they would do to me, which is I would like to know without all the drama and the sugarcoating. I'm just like, tell it to me plainly. And I think this is more a woman thing. We are gaslit a lot. So I would just rather people just told me the truth, right? So this is where it comes from. But it's never received well. And my sister told me something very helpful. I literally have it on a post-it stuck in my desk drawer. And once I was telling her about some issue I was having with some work colleagues or something, some conference issue, something like that. And I said, this person feels this way, but how can they feel this way? And my sister said, don't litigate people's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
If they feel it, believe it, right? Now, whether they are unreasonable about it or there's something else going on, that's a separate matter. But let's just all start with the baseline that if someone's feeling hurt or someone's feeling neglected or someone's feeling upset, they are feeling hurt and neglected and upset. You can't question that. Now you can question if the information was not correctly, put in front of them or whatever. But you can't say you can't be hurt about what I said because I'm right. Like that's exactly the bull in China shop type thing that I'm likely to do. So GPT is actually very good at trying to see someone else's point of view. So I will tell GPT what I think happened. I mean, no names, no whatever, like a situation, like this such and such thing happened and this conference participant behaved in a very bad way. What do you think was going on with them? And GPT will actually tell you that I think this might be going on. They might be busy or they might have, sometimes it'll be quite rude and catty also. They seem to have an overblown sense of self and things like that. But it just helps understand the same set of information from someone else's point of view without having to deal with, calling your sister and your friend and, or if someone has a therapist, like you're not wasting other people's time. But your first instinct, you can get some immediate feedback of, oh, there are multiple ways to look at the same thing. And that's actually I've had long conversations with GPT about 2-3 people who I will tell you about after the call is over, who've been slightly complicated relationships. The other thing I'm known for is writing very blunt and curt emails. And usually I'm just being efficient and saving time, but it is not received that way. So I will give my blunt, curt version to GPT and say, can you make this kinder and softer? And it'll do it for me and I'll copy paste it. Sorry for the hack, but it's just such a nice tool to be more human, which is very counterintuitive, but actually that's one of the use cases I found more recently.
LLMs have been absolutely mind-blowing for me, though, especially in terms of research and getting information. And I've had deep research reports where, like, GPT-5 deep research churned out like 70,000 book-length thingies for me. And if you can prompt with a lot of detail and go into all the exact areas and nuances you want, it's really mind-blowing. It is so good. But I never use it for writing because it can be a research tool, but I don't want it to be a crutch. So I never ever use it for writing, not even for editing.
You don't use for editing?
No, I don't. I use it to write erotica because I'm too lazy and I want it. But I don't use it even for editing because, I just want to do my own. I'm not being prescriptive here. I'm just saying what I kind of do. But here's another, speaking of tech, here's another anti-tech frame that I kind of discovered recently. Like, I co-teach this course called Life Lessons, and we had an offline meetup at Goa, and 50, 60 truly awesome people were there, and Selection Effect, they were all amazing. Great frameworks. And one of them told me something that has stuck with me, where he said that what I try to do every day is enter flow state without a screen, right? And I accidentally stumbled upon that because one day I wanted to read a book and I said, okay, let me go to Starbucks. I'll sit for 3-4 hours. I'll read it there. And I took along a paper notebook and a pen. And there thoughts came to my mind that I was reading it. This was Alistair McIntyre's great book, After Virtue. And I read 3 pages in like 4 hours and I took a lot of notes, and none of the notes had anything to do with the content of the book. Most of them were other stuff and they just came to my mind and I was kind of writing, and I was so pleased at the end of that. Like, one way of thinking about it is I went to read a book, I read only 3 pages in 4 hours, what the fuck. But the other way was I took so many notes, and it may even be the case that I won't go back to those particular notes later, but my mind was working and I just felt so charged and recharged and all of that through that. So maybe it's something that and I've done that a few times since.
But was it that you didn't take your phone there?
No, I did take my phone, but I didn't look at it because I just got so happy in that process that I'm reading something and then I'm writing, and I've went with a novel also one other day, and again same thing. I didn't read too many pages because a thought would come. And I was like, no, there are times where I want to refocus on the book, and there are times I have a notebook and pen. I have, my favorite Muji pen, my favorite Muji notebook, just open it and just write. And it's just, in a sense, Shruti, you spoke about being kind to yourself, which I've often found very hard to do. But this is like you're hanging out with yourself. This is kind of what it's like.
But for me, I have used that a lot through ChatGPT or Claude or whichever LLM one uses, ever since they got the audio thing. So for instance, I get very motion sick. I can't read in a car. And I've been commuting in Bangalore, and it's a nightmare to commute in Bangalore. All the thoughts that come to my head, I keep talking to Claude about it. And at the end of it, I'll say, email this to myself. And I have my notes.
Wow.
But I don't need, and Apple has that whole vehicle motion sickness cues where the dots are there and they'll help you adjust. So I can look at a quick email or a quick note, but I can't really read in a moving vehicle. So it's been incredible for that. Like recently, someone asked me to submit, some notes for Project Syndicate wants people to write their end of year favorite book and things like that. And I'm going to ask you guys your favorite book or books this year. So I was thinking about it aloud today morning, while driving. I went riding in the morning, right? It's like an hour each way and it's a nightmare commute. So I was just like, I read this, but I also read this. Maybe there are connections between these things. And I'm literally talking aloud. And I can tell ChatGPT just transcribe this, or I can tell it to respond, both. And now ChatGPT has the audio function where it'll read out what it's saying to you. If anyone works at OpenAI, please make the speed adjustable, because right now it only does it at 1x, which is very irritating to me. But if I'm stuck in a vehicle, it's game changing, yeah. And my commute in Virginia is 15 minutes. So I have never experienced this until this trip to India, but I've used ChatGPT a lot in my commute.
One place where I've thought it is not very effective. So another thing in my yearly list was to start consciously learning new skills, because I have, cognitive decline. You don't want it to happen, so start learning new skills. So I wanted to pick up Mandarin again. So I did it till a reasonably good level, but last 4-5 years I have not been able to do that. Same with Kannada. I can read, write, but my speaking is atrocious, so I wanted to improve that. So I thought, can I use LLMs for that? But they have not been very helpful. And somehow the promise of the agentic AI has also not materialized for yet. So in that sense, for this purpose, I have tried various ways for it to teach me things, and it's just not worked. So
you mentioned new skills, and Shruti, you mentioned horses. So Shruti, so let's come back to what we've been doing in 2025. Shruti, you have picked up the new skill of horse riding.
Skill is really an overstatement at this point. Okay, so some background, and I think this is more related to your tech question than I had originally imagined. So every year I'll try and do something new, and it could be something really small. It could be like, learning how to bake from a recipe book I love. Or one year I remember I was still living in New York and I wanted to hear the entire Met Opera season live. And they'll, do X number of productions each year, and I wanted to listen to all them live. So each year it'll be something either I'm already somewhat interested in, but I haven't immersed myself in. And anytime I've tried to do a language, it doesn't stick. So now I know I have things. The other thing is I'm also old now. I'm on the wrong side of 40. So I'm like, if it doesn't stick, it's fine. You gave it a go. And the stuff that sticks becomes part of your life. So now I just bake. Now I don't think about baking as a project, right? If someone's coming, you're going somewhere, potluck dinner, I'll just bake and it'll be relatively effortless. I listen to opera all the time. It's relatively effortless, right? So the point is to immerse yourself in something for a year or so and hope it becomes effortless. I live in Virginia, which is a horse country, and I've always loved horses and animals. But I didn't know if I'll enjoy riding horses. And also, apparently, 41 is not the time when someone learns how to ride a horse, especially if they haven't learned it as a child. And I've never been on a horse. Like, I haven't even been on a pony on Juhu Beach, kind of.
And you've been sipping warm water all morning because you have a horse throat. Sorry, please continue.
That has more to do with the pollution in these cities. But so I just decided I'll learn. It was really hard to get into lessons because most of the stables have ponies for smaller children who are their bread and butter clients, and nobody wants the hassle of teaching an adult because adults are inhibited and a pain in the ass and all of that stuff. But I found a wonderful instructor. I go once a week in Virginia, and before we get into the skill part of it, my idea of riding a horse is I know how to stay on it. I know how to get on and get off and stay on without falling yet.
That's skill for us.
That is a whole game.
No. Apparently, to ride a horse, the horse has to do what you tell it to do. Some horses go where I want them to go. Some of them go wherever they want to go. So, the first few weeks I was riding a horse called Blue. And he's a thoroughbred and the most gorgeous fellow. And I'll show you guys pictures after this. And Blue was very responsive because he's always done lessons. Okay, since he was young. And I was like, I'm amazing. Yeah, I'm like such an intuitive rider. Like she's telling me to do something. I'm telling Blue. And you don't talk to a horse. Everything is through body language, right? And there's no reins and no voice. Everything is through your legs. Like you kind of guide the horse through your legs. I was like, I'm an amazing rider. I went back and told Nandu, I think I'm a natural. Then couple of weeks later, there was a horse called Captain, who's a Clydesdale, really tall, big guy. Very affectionate and adorable. I'm doing the same thing with Captain that I did with Blue. Captain has no F's to give, is not doing anything I want him to do. And that day I was like, oh, Blue is well trained and a natural. I am not well trained and a natural.
Maybe it's a skilling problem of the horses, not
no, I think it's definitely my skilling problem. But I also realized I genuinely love horses, not just riding. So I go into half meditative state grooming a horse. So by the way, one major difference between India and Virginia is India, your horse shows up like an Uber, like fully groomed and tacked with a stable boy, who will give you a mounting block and you mount the horse and you go for your lesson. My instructor in Virginia didn't even let me on a horse for the first 3 weeks. I know how to clean out a barn like a pro. I know how to, like a horse stall full of horse shit for those, who don't know what it looks like or
You're in
smells like.
academia, you know all about horse shit.
That too, which is why I was so good at cleaning it up. And then, grooming a horse, tacking a horse. So I can actually groom a horse like a pro, and I find it so meditative. But the other part of riding is it's an hour's drive to Leesburg, where my stables are, and it's an hour's drive back. And I spend about 2 hours there because to ride for 40 minutes, you have to groom, tack, clean barn, the whole thing. It doesn't show up like an Uber the way it shows up here. Horses are also dangerous. They are so large that they can hurt you without intending to hurt you. So even simple things like you don't walk through a gate the same time as a horse. You either go first or you follow. You never stand behind a horse. You always stand to the side because they see you a particular way and they can get spooked. So you can't have your phone. They don't even allow phones in our stables and paddocks. Like everything is just sitting in my car. So for 2 hours, I'm just phone free. The drive there and the drive back, at best, I can listen to a podcast or some music, but I'm phone free. So every week for 4.5 hours, I'm forced to be away from the screen, and I find horses very meditative. We had a very hot summer this year. So there were days I just couldn't ride the horse, but I groomed and shampooed and, I just hung out with my horses, and I'm just so happy to a point where now my family is like, we've never seen this smile with humans. The smile I have when I'm standing with a horse. So it's just, so I won't say it's a new skill I've picked up, but it's a new love I've picked up. Like I love horses. I love hanging with them. And as I become more fit and hopefully a better rider, I'll become somewhat reasonable horsewoman, one hopes.
So quiz question. When Shruti is in a shed with her favorite horse and all her stresses and anxieties just drift away, what would you call that? Stable diffusion.
I like that someone is using the word stable associated with me. This is like achievement unlocked. It's not a word that is usually associated with me.
No, but you are actually quite stable. You're very active all the time, but that doesn't mean unstable. You are quite stable. I've always found you stable, isn't it?
That's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, emotionally you're sorted, intellectually you're super sorted.
Emotionally I'm sorted.
So stable hai na bhai.
I'm not an emotional mess.
What new skills are you picking up, Pranay?
Oh, those are the two things, but some other
Which are the two things?
Trying to learn the two languages.
Oh, that.
Yeah. But one thing that I did last time, which gave me quite a bit of contentment, was this. My grandfather had made notes from a long time ago in Marathi. He had written something. He passed away 30 years ago. But those things were in a form which were very difficult to transcribe, and I was not able to read it, or so I transcribed them and put it in a way that others can read. And just reading that gave me a lot of joy, and just sending it to my relatives was
like what all did
That's
you write about?
amazing.
No, so he essentially wrote his entire life story. That entire, like, until he was 60, 70, he wrote it in a, and it was all about himself, like how his father was Angrezon ke zamane ke jailer actually. So he was and he wrote about it, the entire moving to a city, how it was difficult, how knowing people in a city was really important for people in a village. Just for me also, it's very curious because we are Marathis, but we are from Madhya Pradesh, and at least I wanted to know if there are some links with Maharashtra and all, but there don't seem to be. They were still in Madhya Pradesh's one village, which was anyways a capital, Mandaleshwar, of Ahilyabai and others, and then finally it became Indore and others. So it was very interesting to just know what are those linkages. It was quite fun. Another thing that I tried, based on your suggestion actually, that record a podcast with your family members, etc. So I have been doing this with our extended family, trying to do this, not yet successful. Again, that's one of the things I want to do, but I recorded at least 3 episodes with my relatives, and That was good fun. Just the small little details. For example, one thing that I got to know is I was recording the episode with my Tauji and just getting to know his story, what was it. And he told an interesting thing that until the 1970s, they were in Indore. It's a reasonably Madhya Pradesh's most important city. And they stayed right near the Rajwada. So all these places have a central palace around which the city. So they were quite close to that. But until the 1970s, he told me that on the main boulevard, there used to be, someone used to come and put, a lamp on the street. It was not electricity. This was be 1950s or 60s probably. So that was just so striking for me that this place, which appears very different now, was at one point of time, not too long ago, a place where someone used to come in the evening, put a lamp up. That was just something which stuck with me.
So you've done Life and Times with your granddad who's no more. I love that.
Based
in
on his
written form,
writing, yeah.
in transcription.
I wonder what you've, like, something that I have realized over the last few years, and I'm a decade older than you guys, but something that became very stark during this decade is how quickly time passes. And also there was a sort of a compression of time, in the sense when you are 20, you think 30 years is a lot of time, right? And when you're 50, you realize that it just passed by in a flash. It's not so much of a time. Like, literally World War I is closer to my date of birth than today is, in a sense. So what you look at as large passages of time, that, oh, this was 50 years ago or 100 years ago or 200 years ago, actually doesn't seem so far back. Shakespeare didn't really live so long ago, as much as it seems. And I wonder if reading your grandfather's life story and perhaps relating to him as a person and relating to what he went through, did it cause any of that in you, that you're able to step back a bit from yourself or zoom out a little bit? Have you guys experienced that in your life?
Well, Spotify just told me that my music listening age is 83.
Mine is 70.
Yeah, so I'm already, I think I'm there. I think music is my connection to the past world, as is reading. And my grandparents, I was very fortunate that I had them well into my adult life. So 3 of my grandparents, my paternal grandmother is the only one who died young. The rest of them died in their late 80s and one lived past 100. So I got to know them very well as adults. And my great uncles, which is their, my granddad's younger brother, my grandmother's older sisters, many of them are still alive. And touching 100 or 98 or something like that. So I've really gotten to know them as a grown-up, which is very different than when you're a kid, they're just telling you to behave properly and making sure you're well fed and things like that, right? As a grown-up, you're suddenly like, wow, this great aunt is like super spunky and, can be quite subversive. So you're just learning things that are interesting about them. So yeah, so I guess my relationship with the past, a lot of it is through older family members, but really through music and reading. Music especially, yeah.
No, for me it is, again, because I didn't have the chance to talk to them a lot beyond a point. So it really helped to just go and read those things to realize, because I still know the way they behaved in their 70s or 80s. Just I have some inkling of it. So to connect with what might be their life experiences, that just reading that really helps. So it puts some pieces together. Otherwise, it's just a jigsaw puzzle. So it just helps there, I guess.
Let's take a quick break and return on the other side of the break. Long before I was a podcaster, I was a writer. In fact, chances are that many of you first heard of me because of my blog India Uncut, which was active between 2003 and 2009 and became somewhat popular at the time. I loved the freedom the form gave me, and I feel I was shaped by it in many ways. I exercised my writing muscle every day and was forced to think about many different things because I wrote about many different things. Well, that phase in my life ended for various reasons, and now it is time to revive it. Only now I'm doing it through a newsletter. I have started the India Uncut newsletter at indiauncut.substack.com, where I will write regularly about whatever catches my fancy. I'll write about some of the themes I cover in this podcast and about much else. So please do head on over to indiauncut.substack.com and subscribe. It is free. Once you sign up, each new installment that I write will land up in your email inbox. You don't need to go anywhere. So subscribe now for free. The India Uncut newsletter at indiauncut.substack.com. Thank you.
Dear gentle listeners, welcome back. We've all come back from our bio break and we're still at Takshashila Institution's really lovely studio, by the way, Pranay. This is very nice. Amit, I think you have to tell us what is your highlight this year.
So
and you can't say heart attack.
No, that's done. That wasn't my highlight. It wasn't a low light either. It was just a light. And no, my highlight was
it was a heavy.
It was a heavy. So I took a long trip through Spain in April this year. My wife had wanted to go there for a long time, and as you know, she's an art curator and she's into art and all of that.
Hi, Jasmine.
And her plan really was to visit all the museums and do all of that. So I thought, theek hai, if I'm going along, I don't want to be that boring travel companion who is just going through the motions to be with the other person. My whole thing was, let me immerse myself in it and educate myself. So then what I did was, I used deep research ke deep prompts. Like I would tell it things like, I'm going to the Prado today, so give me a history of world art through the works at the Prado and tell me the order in which I should go through the rooms to see them, and make a map of that also. And it did all of that, and it was mind-blowing. And then I did deep dives into all the major Spanish artists, read some books also where I had to, because you know me. And I found one very interesting thing. Like, first of all, my relationship to art has always been not an intellectual one, but a visceral one, that I will see something and I will react viscerally and I will love it, but otherwise I won't really understand it. And the reason I won't understand it, because so much of fine art, whatever one thinks of it, is so contextual to how it arose and etc., and that context is really important. But anyway, so I really got deep into it, as I tend to do once I enter a rabbit hole. And one of the things I realized was that the 5 great Spanish artists, which is Velázquez, Goya, Miro, Dali, Picasso, all became super successful when they were really young. But for me, their finest work, the work that really moved me viscerally and intellectually and that really hit me, was work that they did in their 70s or 80s, towards the end of their lives. And I was very fascinated and inspired by that. In fact, episode 97 of Everything is Everything is called The Light in Winter, where I speak about each of these guys at some length. But I found this very inspiring, because what this really showed me is that it is not true that you have to be young and things are happening in your 20s or 30s or whatever. Even for someone like me who's just crossed 50, there's a lot of scope. In fact, this can actually now make me more lazy, because being a true Bengali, I can think that what's the hurry, 70s mein karenge bhai, abhi kya jaldi hai. No, but it's great work, and this ties into a concept I'll come back to in a moment, because you're also going to ask about books we read this year, and I'll come to a particular book and a particular framework that I learned from there, which kind of makes sense of this. But I looked at all of this, and in particular, I was very, very affected and moved in a way I can't even articulate properly by Francisco Goya's black paintings. Now, Goya lived in the 1700s. Towards the end of that century, he went deaf, which is very interesting, because you wonder how it affected his art. And he was like coat painter types in those days. Baroque period is happening, all of that is happening. You know what that art is like. And in the early 1800s, when I think he's in his 70s, in his house, he makes a bunch of paintings on the walls, which are not to be seen by anyone. He's just making them for himself. And they are now called the black paintings. And luckily, after he died, the landlord had the good sense to ask someone, do you want to preserve those? And they were preserved, and they're in the Prado in a room, which is full of black paintings. And it is incredible, because especially if you know the context, but even without the context, they're incredibly powerful on their own. But if you know the context of the kind of art that was happening, you wonder what kind of freak this man was, because the kind of art he was doing, like modernism really started in the late 1800s with impressionism and all that, and art moves beyond where it was. But Goya is kind of called the bridge between the classical age and the modern age, and he preceded it by 50 years, and in a sense I feel he gave a lot of later artists a freedom to think in different ways. And these paintings, the black paintings, are so dark and so grim, and they don't peer into the exterior world but into the interior world, into the human soul. 2 old men talking to each other, or a dog which appears submerged by water and you just see the head popping out. And some of those are so incredible, and to stand in that room in front of those paintings is like cannot describe it, to the extent that when we were leaving the museum, I actually said, let me go back to that room because I will never visit it again. And I just went back and I saw everything for 15 minutes, and it's just so incredible, and you realize the power of art. And that was great. Now for the book in the framework.
No, wait. Where all did you go in Spain? Tell us about the trip.
Really, Madrid, Barcelona, and a bunch of other places. But the museums were Madrid, Barcelona, and we went
bunch
to
of other places. Mane, theek se
like
batao na.
Figueres, where the Great Dali Museum is, and some other places. But these are the memorable ones. For me, the museums are the really memorable ones. The Prado is where the Black Room is, and Barcelona has a Picasso museum and a Miro museum on top of a hill where cycling races end. It's a legendary place for the Vuelta a España and the tour of the Basque Country, and they kind of go through that particular hill. I forget what it's called. So that was that.
Did you go to Cordoba?
Didn't go to Cordoba, alas.
It has the European sort of monument that I think is the most underrated. So it's got the Mezquita, which used to be a mosque and then became a church, and then got converted to a mosque and is currently a church, and it's just incredible. And it has Sunday service, but it also has a window to Mecca, and it's like it's the red and white, but that red you also see in a lot of South Indian temples. That brick red. So it just feels like a really bizarre place, like nothing you've ever experienced, but also like just somehow makes sense. I don't know why.
And a lot of that was there in Spain because, you see both the histories. You see the Islamic years,
the
and you
Moorish.
see the Christian years, and you see a lot. And the more you know, and obviously we were there for like 15 days, and there's only so much you can really kind of get into. And the framework, like earlier I mentioned their best work in the 70s and 80s. How is this happening? So a very fine book I read this year is called From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. And the subtitle of the book is, I think, How to Make the Most of the Second Half of Your Life. There he begins by pointing out something that is depressing and that actually seems to indicate that it's done, give it up, you can't make anything out of it, which is he talks about decline. And he says that decline inevitably happens in terms of skill and what you're good at, either in your 30s or latest by the 50s. So the mathematicians will start declining much earlier, maybe by the late 20s even, and historians apparently decline the last, but by the early 50s they are gone. And what's happening there is it is a decline in a particular kind of intelligence. He says there are two kinds of intelligence. One is fluid intelligence, one is crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence is that ability to pick up something really fast, to read a book, you learn a skill, that happens really fast. That's fluid intelligence. Learning coding, learning an instrument. And that ability declines as you grow older to the point that it's a bell curve and is definitely going down at some point. But crystallized intelligence starts sort of rising perhaps in the 30s, and then it can go up or plateau, but it doesn't have to go down at all. And crystallized intelligence is the ability to zoom out, to take a step back, to connect the dots and see the bigger picture, and all of those things. Some of it you could call wisdom, some of it you could just call, the everything is everything view of the world, if you manage to do that, which is why the best CEOs will be in their 50s. The best teachers are inevitably older people if you go by how university surveys and how students rate their teachers, etc., etc. And therefore that gave me hope. And then when I look at the art of all of these guys, Picasso, Miro, Dali, all of these guys, what is happening is that they become famous in their 20s when their fluid intelligence is at its peak. They are doing incredible work. Picasso does cubism and he's just breaking barriers, breaking boundaries. It's mind-blowing. It's great. It is like the sort of virtuosity you will see from a guitarist who is doing Steve Vai kind of things and playing impossible tunes. Whereas later Therav has come. They have seen the world. They don't have to play 40 notes in 3 seconds. They can just play 3 notes in a minute and make it sound incredible. They understand the power of silence. They understand that sometimes the best thing you can do with a canvas is not fill it up, but make the blank spaces speak, and so on and so forth. And they also, and this is partly to do with early success also, they also have the confidence and the self-assurance to just do whatever the hell they want and not have to worry about the reactions of other people and so on and so forth. So no doubt some of that luxury is afforded to them by their that early success. But that later work is so incredibly powerful that you look at it and you realize that a young person could not have done this, right? And that's inspiring and beautiful to me. And I wonder what you guys think about these frames of fluid and crystallized intelligence, because you guys are also engaged by the necessity of the work that you do to consciously apply that crystallized intelligence and see the bigger picture also.
Yeah, no, what I was thinking about is it's incredibly difficult to convert that fluid intelligence into crystallized intelligence, right? Most of the people you would see, if they have gotten quick success, and after that it's very difficult to realize that at a different age you need a different kind of intelligence which need different kinds of tools. So child artists or prodigies have incredibly tough times later on. So for these people to overcome that, I think it is also a survivorship bias, right? Like, these were the people who were successful. There would have been a bunch of maybe 500 Spanish artists who were prodigies who we can't see, but these were the people who were able to think beyond their fluid intelligence, realize that their fluid intelligence has gone down, and then also think that they have something called crystallized intelligence and capitalize on it, because it could easily have gone the other way, right? They would have played the part in their 50s of being what they were in their 20s, trying to be that, and the world would have forced them to be that also, because the world knows them as their 20-year-old. So for them, I don't know, like, these were the people who were really the great ones who overcame all these tendencies and became successful. So I don't know, yeah, that itself, like, it's a meta thing. Realizing this itself is an example of crystallized intelligence.
I mean, another example, since you mentioned that in their 50s they would have been forced to be what they were earlier, is U2 recently came out with an album of a whole bunch of their old songs which they're covering differently.
Mm-hmm.
And when you reinterpreting rather, and when you think about it, every band that has an early hit is actually screwed. Like, there's no wonder that Radiohead hates Creep, right? Because then it almost becomes ossified. That is who you are. Every time you perform, you're expected to perform that song in exactly the same way. One of my friends, Raman Negi, used to be part of this band called The Local Train, and he is now a very successful solo artist doing a very good work, very subtle, complex work, evolved a lot. And his early hit is a great song called Chulo, which he wrote when he was 22 or 23 years old, right? And part of the trap the Local Train fell into is they're expected to perform that song all the time. They're expected to pretend to be that old version of themselves, and Raman couldn't take it anymore eventually and just kind of left. And Chulo is actually a great song. I love it. It's beautiful songwriting, it's simple and whatever, but the guy wants to move on to something else, and that's the magic that you want to see.
Yeah, so there's another book which is written by one of my colleagues who's now at Mercatus. I was just looking up the full name of the book. So this is Henry Oliver. He's a fantastic writer, and like anytime I have a literature question, I ask him, and we started the Emerging Scholars program at Mercatus. So he's one of them. And the title of the book is Second Act, What Late Bloomers Can Tell You About Success and Reinventing Your Life. And so sort of the framework he's talking about is not that late bloomers are like suddenly people who hit success later in their life, or something happens or technology shifts or something like that. It's more like they have this long, phase of experimentation, learning, compounding, and kind of being at it. And then it shifts into the exploiting what they have accumulated phase, right? So it's not that they just started doing what they're doing later. It's that they've just accumulated or crystallized or are in a flow state for a long time, right? They just get their recognition later.
Dividends.
Exactly.
Come out that
So the example he talks about various real life people that we're all familiar with, but Frank Lloyd Wright is one of them. Maya Angelou is one of them, right? Margaret Thatcher is one of them. Sort of like this backbencher MP who then later really comes into her own. So the book is really lovely. It's very well written. So I recommend that. I don't know about, I'm not someone who has like targets to hit in a particular way. And I've never been that person who thought, by 25, I should have accomplished ABC, or by 40, I should have done all of this. And I know people have both goals and targets like that. I've never been one of them. So I don't know if I'm an early bloomer or a late bloomer. I still think I'm pretty young and pretty happy and learning. But I don't know, hopefully it never stops. I still try to learn one new thing every year, like properly.
Anything else in your years that you guys would like to speak about?
Yeah.
Do you travel much?
Yes, but mostly for work.
Oh, so you don't have a big life-changing trip like this that happened?
No. But this year, one interesting thing which happened was this year we had to search for, identify schools for our kid. He's 6 years old now. He'll be 6. So that was an exercise in negotiating trade-offs because you never find a perfect school. So for us, it was a nice project to just identify that. Eventually, you realize all those trade-offs. No, there's nothing perfect. You try to identify which thing works most for you. You're forced to prioritize things. So that was a good exercise. I enjoyed doing that in a more systematic manner. We gave it a lot of time, but eventually it's not as if we have the perfect answer, but I thought the process was quite interesting.
What did you and your wife learn about yourselves while doing that crazy thing?
It's just you always realize that people assign different weightages to different things, right?
Yeah.
Like my wife's Asha's priorities were different, mine would be different. Then finally you have to converge on something. So that exercise itself was quite fun to do. So that was one thing. The other thing which was quite fun was I wanted to do these Hindi video essays on YouTube. I couldn't get far ahead in it, but I thought to explore a new format on YouTube, which would be monologues or in that way. So couple of things we did. For example, Parikshit, who's the editor at Pulyabazi, had translated the Grammar of Anarchy speech of Ambedkar into readable Hindi. So just reading that was one episode which we did, was quite fun. One more was the fun episode where in Montek Singh Ahluwalia's book, there's that story about how Maruti succeeded, not because of the restrictions, but because the restrictions were specifically opened up for this one company called Maruti, and how that should actually happen to every company instead of just one. So I did an episode on that, just narrating that. That was quite fun to do. So trying to explore these formats is still...
Who did you look at as models for the kind of video essays you wanted to make?
So I'm trying to see more of the Hindi essay world also. So some people, this Mohak Mangal makes pretty good videos. In the non-Hindi world, Veritasium,
He's great,
it's great channel. So, one really inspiring one, I'm not, but Three Blue One Brown. That channel is great. One more thing, it's animated, not something which I'm doing, but Jared Owen has a really nice channel which he just animates things like how does an Abrams tank work, how does it look. So me and my son have a great time watching this, just learning, because those things you generally otherwise, without the animation, you can narrate it, you can write a book about it, but you will not understand how an Abrams tank looks from the inside unless you have a great animation. So
one of the sort of video essay channels I'd recommend, because I thought of it as a model for the kind of thing I'd like to do at some point also, is there's a famous YouTuber called Casey Neistat, but his brother is called Van Neistat. And Van Neistat does these beautiful video essays which last a few minutes, and it's just him doing things in the house. But it's got a particular aesthetic to it, and it's really interesting. So at some point I'll send you the link. You should check that out. And also, after Everything is Everything sadly ended, Shruti recommended gentle listeners that I bring Pranay on to do the show with me. And Pranay and I kind of both are on the same page about not taking that particular brand forward, but doing something together. And as you were speaking, the thought struck me that a good model for that is this great vlog called Vlog Brothers, which is run by John Green and Hank Green. And it's just two guys just talking into the camera. There's nothing, there's no special effects, there's no lighting. Up bedroom mein laga ke apne phone laga diya, just talking. But what you're talking about is interesting, and it's very intimate, and it's very sweet. So yeah, I mean, Pranay and I, of course, in the coming days will brainstorm a lot about what we are going to do together. But I just thought I should point you to that very interesting channel. And from the show notes, I'll link a video there which is my favorite YouTube video of all time, and it's John Green reading out this, and the video is nothing but he's walking through the snow. So the video is just walking through the snow with some footstep noises as he's walking through the snow. It's not even him; it's just the walk that he's taking, and he's reading out this beautiful essay that he wrote, which is many, and it deals with grief and hope and all kinds of things. And I'll just link it. It is just so amazing. In fact, I feel like taking a break from the recording to show it to you, but I'll fight that temptation because we do have a hard stop coming up. Have you seen that channel, Shruti? What?
I don't see many. I mean, I barely listen to podcasts. I listen to very few, and I don't see any of that on YouTube. On YouTube, I'm almost only consuming music and maybe like if I'm looking for a recipe or something like that. But I don't watch, or like, old comedy clips and, something crazy Laurel and Hardy did or something. I am not into the consuming information through video world at all.
So let me throw at you a bunch of questions that may get you to introspect about the year. I'll throw 2-3 questions because they're kind of related and you can take any part of them or answer them. What emotion did you feel more strongly this year than any previous year? What's a part of yourself you're trying to make peace with? And yeah, just these two. I think they're actually very big questions on their own.
Yeah, this year for me, last year, December, I remember I was recording my end of year episode for my podcast with my producer, Dallas, who's awesome. Hi, Dallas. And she asked me, what's something you want to do more in 2025? And I was like, hang out with more elephants and animals. And that actually happened. So it started last year in Kochi, where we had our Emergent Ventures meetup. And, there are elephant orphanages and stuff like that. And this year I got to go to Masai Mara, which has been a lifelong dream. Like the 8-year-old and the 9-year-old and the 14-year-old and the 28-year-old version of me is just thrilled. I stopped going to zoos when I was very young because I was very traumatized by animals behind bars and, very traumatized by animals in a circus and stuff like that. But I love animals and you can't go and see them anywhere. So Masai Mara is that perfect place where we are the ones behind bars in a jeep and the animals roam free, but you can get relatively close to them. And it's the most magical place in the world. I'm guessing any safari where you get to just really be that close to animals. My love for elephants is, I think, at this point famous, but I actually got to meet a lot of elephants. Then I also had a trip to Ghana, so I hung out, in their national park with lots of elephants. So took lots of elephant pictures. I don't think there's anything in the world cuter than a baby elephant. And right now I'm cheating on my dogs by saying that, but there really isn't anything cuter than a baby elephant. And horses, I've gotten to know a lot of horses. I rode in England and Wales, right in Virginia, now in Bangalore. So I feel like now I know horses in many different countries and I've hugged them and pet them and ridden them and, seen their temperament. So I think the big emotion this year is just I am so happy with animals and I'm so at peace with animals in a way that I'm sorry, humans. There's nothing that comes anywhere close. And I thought it was a dog specific thing and my dog specific thing, but actually it's more across the board. So I think as I go on, going on safari is a very expensive hobby, as is horse riding. So I got to figure out ways by which I can hang out more with animals.
I would say the dominant emotion is just that there are so many things that you still need to learn on a personal level, professional level. Like for example, still parenting is something we are still learning, and these are things that don't come in manuals that you can understand. So just spending some time with the kid and trying to understand. Now he's 5 and 6, so he has interesting stories. He sometimes tells quotes, which again I have noted down in my obsidian. I'll show it to him when he's older, and there'll be things that he says which will strike you, and then we discuss that. Oh, he said something like this. So but just generally there's no manual for parenting, right? So you are just going through it and then trying to understand, okay, how should I have reacted in a particular situation, or because we realize that all of the parenting thing is finally about modeling the right behavior, and the kids just pick up things that you don't pick up or you don't realize, so they are really good at it. So those are the things that are really on top of my mind. That how do you improve? How do you set the right behavior in front of him? What are the things that you think you're pretending to not show it to him, but he's still picking up on them? So these are the dominant things in my mind.
Yeah, and before I now ask you the second question, my answer to these I just realized is actually the same thing. Like my dominant emotion for a lot of the year has been a sense of futility, that all of this work that I do is just completely pointless, and what's the point, and that kind of sense, and also deep frustration that I haven't been able to do the kind of writing I want to do, and I'm instead
But
stuck
if you
in
were
this.
saying you should not take oneself more seriously, then it should not matter.
It should not, but so that's a part of myself that I'm trying to make peace with. That I'm trying to kind of mitigate that, frankly, the only way to deal with the frustration and anger at myself is to to actually get the writing done. Like I remember 4 or 5 years ago, an ex-colleague of ours, Hamsini, who worked with me on Pragati, she had once asked me at the start of the year, what's your plan for the year? So I said, I'm going to write a book. And then I said, and I meant it at the time, that if I can't do it, I'll kill myself. And I actually meant it at that time because I wanted it so badly, and I've just wanted it more and more badly every year. But I've been fighting because I just haven't had the internal discipline to do it. That it's very sort of easy for me to appear productive to the outside world by doing the things I have a deadline for, that every Friday this comes and every Monday this comes. So I have to make peace with that part of myself, maybe desire it less, and maybe that will actually help me sit down and get the job done. But now I'm reaching the stage where I'm like, okay, it's enough. I have to do it now. I can't make excuses, and I can't make it this big thing that is up there in the sky. I have to do the small things. I just sit down and write every day, and eventually that big thing in the sky will happen. So intellectually, I know exactly what to do. If I came to myself for advice, I would give the best freaking advice.
That's true for all of us. Gyan to muft hai.
ज्ञान तो मुफ्त है, हम भारतीय है, ज्ञान देंगे आपको. But when the time comes to sit down and kind of do it, it's been really hard. But at least I know what the problem is, and I will figure it out. I'm actually really optimistic about figuring it out, especially after Picasso, Dali, Velasquez, Goa, and my paintings won't be so black, and I'll figure it out. But how would you answer this? Like, what's a part of yourself you're trying to make peace with?
The rude version of this is, I think, at the older you get, the fewer fucks you have to give about the world. And I think I find it hard to say no. I'm getting better at it. But largely just getting comfortable with the fact that you can't please everyone and you can't contort yourself into doing right by everyone, and that's fine.
On similar lines, I think one thing is it's very difficult to change the innate behaviors of oneself or tendencies. You can change at the margin, but generally you are what you are based on your experiences and others. So there are things that I don't like about myself, but then I have tried changing them, but then I realized that, man, it's damn tough. I'm not able to change it, and it just puts so much stress on me. So yeah, I am what I am. So being peace with yourself and your nature is, I guess, the thing.
Okay, let's introspective and go back to the domain of ideas, set of related questions, which actually pretty much should have the same answer in the same zone. What idea or book changed your inner landscape this year? Which rabbit hole did you gleefully get lost in? What did you learn that made you go, how did I not know this? And finally, what made you feel intellectually alive this year?
Acha, this is too many. We have to repeat them because मेरे को कुछ याद नहीं रहेगा.
Okay, so basically...
So, our first book, because that was my question to both of you. What was the great book you read this year that was like kind of life-changing, or it could be more than one book?
I'm going to pick up my Kindle and quickly browse through what I actually did read. In the meantime, Pranay?
I had this conversation with Claude today morning, so I'm a little more refreshed.
Dude, go ahead then.
So there's a lovely book called Mathematica by David Bessies. I've told you about it. You should read it. He is a mathematician, and the book is very hard to describe, and I'm botching it up. So please don't go by my description and read the book. The book is not about mathematics. It's actually about curiosity and intuition. And he talks about how all humans are born with a certain kind of intuition, including very strong mathematical intuition, which we then turn into formal language. And what the formal language is really supposed to do is it's supposed to help you test your curiosity, right? Or test your intuition. I intuitively think, like for instance, if my intuition was that, there is more than one tangent at each point, then the formal math can actually help you prove or disprove that. But it has to start with the intuition. And I think one of the examples in the book, I don't remember, maybe I'm misquoting, is about a circle. And he says, any person I ask, if I tell them, think of a circle and think of a line going through the circle, and how many points does it intersect at? Everyone will say 2. And you can literally imagine a circle. And I've given you no more information. The formal proof of that is going to be more complicated and convoluted, but you can see the math oftentimes and touch and feel it and talk to it before you can prove it. And he says the best formal mathematicians are like that, the people who are guided by intuition as opposed to formalism. And I'm an economist, and I think economics has a lot to learn from that. Which is we've taken the method and the formalism so seriously, whereas all of us have such strong economic intuition, which we just suppress all the time for no good reason. And there are a lot of things in economics which are not intuitive, like the law of comparative advantage or something like that. But intuition still needs to be the guiding force. So somehow that book one is beautifully written. It's about curiosity. I've been at a university and in the pedagogy business for a long time, but it was just so well written, and it was coming from a genius mathematician who is able to do this so simply, and I loved it.
I think we've discussed this in an earlier episode about books this year, but I really liked The Sixth of Humanity, just the fact that there are many counterintuitive things in it, and the book links to many interesting reports that about India's developmental journey. So, for example, I really read that 1962, the report on the Committee of Emotional Integration of India. So, it was quite fun. So, just to read what were the things that people were thinking at that point of time, what were the challenges they were thinking about making India a nation in the true sense of the word. So those were quite fun things to read. So there were many rabbit holes because of the book that I entered. One more thing that I enjoyed as a rabbit hole getting lost into is this idea of critical minerals. Because right now, every country is defining its own critical minerals. Believe it or not, most countries have a list called which are our critical minerals. I mean, important. And they are half of the periodic table. Like half of the periodic table can't be critical. Then what's the use? So this year, I wanted to understand this deeper because, as you know, China, US, a lot of the things are happening on rare earths. China has restricted certain rare earths to US, and there is a perception that had the role to play in Trump agreeing to the things that China wanted. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand that ecosystem. What are these critical minerals? Are they really critical? Can they be substituted by something else? So that has been quite fun and rewarding. So most of my writing this year was also on that.
So I'll offer you 2 books with an essay writer in between and a framework linking it all together. So the first of the books is In Praise of Floods by James C. Scott. Now, James C. Scott, of course, has written the 2 great masterpieces, Seeing Like a State and Against the Grain. And so I began In Praise of Floods with high expectations, but it was published posthumously after he had died. He hadn't completed the book, and it's a deeply imperfect book in some ways. I think the book is half a masterpiece, a quarter mediocre, and a quarter kinda incoherent. But, leaving that aside, who am I to pass judgment on him, but just one of the great thinkers of the century. And there is a concept in that which I love, but first let me talk a little bit about something I learned about rivers from the book. That when we see rivers on a map, we imagine it's going from point A to point B, and this is basically how it is going. It is a particular wavy line which goes from place to place. Now, what I realized actually is that a river isn't what we think it is. That a river is in flood a lot of the time. The Amazon, at its widest during a year when it overfloods, is 6 times as large as a normal Amazon. Right? And it floods, and the areas through which it floods is called the flood plains, and that is where a lot of the great eco diversity happens, a lot of the action happens, and it's absolutely amazing. And when you get in the way of a river through man-made dams or whatever, these projects of high modernism, as it were, inevitably make things worse and have disastrous consequences. Like, you may prevent small floods, but the subsequent large flood, when it hits, is far more devastating, and in our hubris we would have built all over the floodplains, etc., etc. So this is one of the foundational things in the book, but there is a concept in it which I love deeply and which spoke to me deeply. The term meander comes from a Turkish river called Meanderness or whatever. It comes from a Turkish river, which obviously is a wavy river. It meanders, and therefore the term meander comes from there. Now, one of the things that he points out in his book is that all rivers were in different places once upon a time. If you take a large enough time span, they are not in the same place. They are meandering. And what really happens is that when you go from point A to point B, obviously the ground underneath is uneven. So it will slope in some way or the other, and then it will go in that direction, and then it takes that winding shape that we know. And that exacerbates itself, because where it is convex, the flow of water is greater and it tends to flow more in that direction, and where it is concave, it is less. So rivers tend to meander more and more, and that is part of what they do, from which I got this fantastic term. This is my word for 2025: meanderness. Meanderness is a scientific term for the ratio of a river's actual route to the straight line route it would have taken from starting point to ending point. I think if it's more than 1.5, it is considered to have meandered, and therefore you can actually measure this, and there is something called meanderness. Now, I will tell you in what context I began to apply it to my own life. I read this around the time the Tour de France got over. I'm a huge cycling buff. I have a cycling episode on Everything is Everything also. And the Tour de France was won brilliantly by this genius sportsman called Tadej Pogacar, who has reached a level I think no cyclist ever has, and perhaps no sportsman ever has, in terms of just reaching the pinnacle. And while watching that, I thought, okay, this man has reached, like, I can't think that this is anything less than 100% of his potential, because it is so incredible. He's fully maximized it. Then, like a true man, I turned to myself and I said, how have I done? And my first thought was, I have only hit 15 or 20% of my potential. Then I thought a little deeper and said, what the fuck are you even thinking? Is 2 to 5%. And now I'd say closer to 2%, right? And in my Bengali melodramatic way, I came up with a term for it called the great squandering. Right? And I said, okay, my life is a great squandering. But then, when I read James C. Scott's book, I started thinking about the paths that my life has taken. And I realized that the meanderness in my life has been quite high. That I start in television, I start in advertising, go to television, do journalism, do blogging, go from here to there, and, my years as a poker player, and finally I'm here. So I said that this is actually usually a feature, not a bug. The richest ecosystems come when you meander. I meandered a lot. I experienced different things. It expanded my frames of seeing the world. All of that is beautiful. I will still be hard on myself because I feel that I didn't take full advantage of my meandering as I could have. But nevertheless, meanderness by itself is not a bad thing. That you haven't gone from point A to point B is not a bad thing. It is perfectly fine. Now I want to bring you to my second recommendation.
Can I
Sure.
interrupt you here? I think that's a great title for your
Meanderness.
meanderness, for whatever you guys together.
Thank you. Maybe this is where the show originates. Thank you. We'll think about it. Now,
but before that, so the meanderness framework assumes that there is some reference line. Correct?
Yeah, which in the case of a river is point A to point B, but in the case of an individual, it could be the target they set for themselves, or what society expects, or what you would expect seeing their starting point.
Yeah, but that target itself in a human's life keeps changing.
Yeah,
right?
true.
So in that sense, there's no one reference point. Your reference point in 20 will be different from there.
But I think what I got out of reading that James C. Scott's book is also, whatever we are saying is the target point of a river or point A to point B is also totally man-made and imposed. The river itself doesn't have anything of a purpose beyond flowing wherever it wishes to go.
Even rivers don't have a purpose.
No river steps in the same river twice.
By the way, that there's one river, there's a chapter which is, we should exchange notes on what we thought was incoherent and what we thought was good. But that river chapter some of it is just really incoherent to me. But it's still fun to read in some sense. And maybe I wouldn't have gotten through the book if it weren't James C. Scott. And I'm just such a huge admirer of his, and he's had such a profound impact. But that chapter just drove me nuts, yaar, in the book.
Let's come back to because all my recommendations
so
are
the
linked.
part of it is, I think the podcast is also going to be a little bit like that, which is, you're going to start something. I'm going to say, oh my God, ye kya kar rahe ho, yaar? And then you'll go somewhere and be like, why are you people talking about all these bizarro diversions? You're so smart. Why haven't you done your homework? Have a script. But I think with the two of you, I have a feeling the meanderness will be what makes it interesting.
I would love that. I would learn from that, I think. Anyway, my second recommendation is this great essays/substacker I discovered this year called Henrik Carlson. Right? His essays, have I sent his essays to you guys? No, oh my God.
Your love language is not links.
Yeah.
You have to link bomb me.
Now it will be. I'll link bomb you because there's one essay he wrote that speaks to this, which is so beautiful. And I've shared it with so many people and I think it can change lives. I'll link it from the show notes, but I'll give a brief gist of it. And the gist of it is he talks about how the design of his life fell into place when he took this particular route, where instead of saying that this is a life I want to live and going out and trying to live like that and being intentional about what he wants and going out and getting it. Like, this is the kind of partner I want, I'll go out and look for that kind of partner. Or this is the kind of job I want, I'll go out and look for the kind of job I want. He said that instead of doing that, I just left myself open to experiences. Whatever was not in my comfort zone, I pushed it away. Whatever came into my comfort zone, I embraced it. And then today, instead of trying to fit myself to the notion of a life I might have, I have a life that fits me perfectly, including the partner that he has. And I'm not stating it anywhere near with the same kind of power and eloquence that this man has, but I was extremely affected by it. And these are long essays. He has another essay on form, which is great, and I'll share them they'll be in my show notes. But through this particular essay where he talks about finding the design for your life by letting things fit you rather than the other way around, I discovered this book by Christopher Alexander called Notes on the Synthesis of Form, which on the face of it is a book about design, about perfect design, good design and bad design, and how form and function go together so well, and etc. etc. And that's a very banal description, but it's a great book. So I remember just reading this book, and this is one of those books which I was reading and taking notes, and I was so inspired by it. And as I may or may not have told you guys, I have this non-fiction idea in my head for a couple of years, which is all about form. And that was also very, very inspired by, this gave further fuel to that. So again, this is a book I'd recommend. I'd recommend Henrik Carlson's essays. And I'm also inspired by this little incident that happened in his life where he talks about how he lives with his wife on a farm. And he used to work part-time in a gallery. And now I think his Substack makes him $25,000 a year or something, which I think is a pitiful amount for a writer of this power. But this is what he had chosen to do. There was a part-time job and he was doing the Substack. And then somebody who read him or whatever, some company came to him with an awesome offer, and it was many multiples of what he was making. And he went to his wife. He couldn't figure out what to do. And he went to his wife and he started chatting with her about the offer. And at one point, she just cut him short and said, why are you even saying this? Obviously, you're not going to do it. Because it was understood that it's not about the money. It's about the kind of life you want to live. That does this fit me? And I think that's such a great question to ask about anything, whether it be friends or relationships or the things that you do. Does this fit me? Am I forcing myself into this because, I have some conception of what I want to do or how I want to be seen or whatever, but does this really, really fit me? And obviously, I'm not saying never go out of your comfort zone, because every Bengali will then just sit in his bedroom and watch TV. But you get that larger sense. And yeah.
The second book for me was Anaximander by Carlo Rovelli. And wait, am I saying the name right? Yaar, ye na mera bahut bada problem hai. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce this, but the way it's written in English is Anaximander. And he kind of predates all the great physicists, but one of the first to think about Earth not being the center of the universe and not being turtles all the way down and things like that. It's also a book about intuition, and it's also a book about how, even though we have all these formal proofs and what we know for sure is something we think about as, oh, this is well-established science. What Carlo Rovelli is trying to tell us through the life of Anaximander is nothing is well-established because it'll always be challenged. And before we know it, whatever was his version of the universe is then, challenged. And what Galileo's version of the universe is challenged. Then whatever is Newtonian version of universe is challenged. And, the same thing will happen with Einstein, and the same thing will happen with the next guy and the next guy. And it's just Carlo Rovelli, of course, writes beautifully, but it is a great book. So I guess for me, the theme between the two books, now that I'm speaking aloud, is just epistemic humility, right? Which is a very strong thing in the Austrian tradition. It's a very Hayekian, Hayek, Karl Popper, all of them, this idea of what we know as true and verifiable and falsifiable and what is knowledge, big K knowledge, is that there's no such thing, and it's always a process. So in Austrian economics, process is about market process, but there's also an epistemic process, which comes really fundamentally from being in communities that have epistemic humility. So these were the two books that I think were the really standout feature books, and they were also not about economics or anything else I do in my everyday life. So I guess they were just so new to me. I guess if you speak with a mathematician or a physicist, these may be well-established ideas in their fields, but I just didn't know them.
I did some fiction reading also. I don't do a lot of fiction reading, but I liked DP's books. So Divya Prakash Dubey, who was been on your podcast also, and I started reading Hindi after quite some time. I mean the fiction stuff, and some of those stories. There's a book called Ibn Battuti, which is quite good because it's talking about a mother-son friendship in a very progressive environment, which is generally not how I have read the Hindi things, which are things of the yore and old things. But this was really nicely written, a very modern way of writing, simple words, really evocative and very nicely done. So that was one. And the other thing which Terry Pratchett is one thing which Nitin had recommended long time ago. So I'm going through the Discworld novels, and I have done around 15-20 books I have finished, and I'm enjoying that a lot, especially the patrician and the way he operates. It's quite fun to read.
This was my first year reading Terry Pratchett. My husband's been a huge fan. I have close friends who are obsessed with Terry Pratchett. And I picked up my first couple of Pratchett novels and I've had a great time, but I haven't read 15. I'm a slow reader.
A book I would recommend, which I've recently started rereading because I recommended it to someone for a 12-year-old son, and then I thought, hey, I should also reread it, is Philip Pullman's Dark Materials trilogy, if you've read that. So I started rereading it again because there are bits of it, even though I read it 20 years ago, there are bits of it I still remember, like The Demons That We Carry With Us, Daemon. Have you read the books?
No, I haven't read the books, but I've heard of them.
Yeah. So I think they are beautiful books and I'd recommend them highly as well. So let me now go on to my next question, which is, Shruti, when you were also present at that podcast panel at that unconference that we did, and there's something interesting you said there, which I thought was very cool, a very good way of thinking about this, where you said that when you started your podcast, your target audience was a 19-year-old Shruti, because you remembered yourself in college and so confused, curious, intelligent, eager, wanting to learn, but really confused, didn't know anything, etc., etc. And that was a target audience for your podcast. So I want to ask you that if that 19-year-old Shruti was to encounter you as you are today, what would she be surprised by? What would she be horrified by? What would she be really glad to see? And a version of that question for you, Pranay.
So 1 second. What would she be surprised by? What would she be horrified by?
And what would she have loved to see? What would she love to see?
She would be horrified by the physical fitness because at 19 I was far fitter.
Oh, wow.
So that's easy enough. What would she be surprised by? I think she would be surprised I didn't end up being a lawyer and I became an economist. Because when I was 19, I still thought I'm going to do my undergrad in economics and then go on to get a law degree, which I did. And then work as a lawyer, as a full-time lawyer. And I just changed the course of my life. So that would be something.
But that's kind of a LinkedIn fact. What deeper thing?
Deeper thing? What is deeper to me than being an economist? I don't know. See, everything else, there's so many things which are birth accident and life chooses for you, right? So when people ask me things like, what does it feel like to be a woman or something? I'm like, I don't have any counterfactual. I don't know the non-woman experience. But the two things which are defining features about me, which I've chosen for myself, one is being an economist, and I can't not think like an economist. And the other is being an immigrant. So these are things I have actively chosen for myself in my adult life. I guess another thing she would have been surprised by is that I got married and am happily married to the same person for many, many, many years.
Why would she be surprised?
And
You
no
did
plans
not
of
imagine
getting married,
this.
yeah.
But at 19, you don't plan that.
No, never planned. I mean, I really didn't think marriage was a good idea. I was very like footloose and fancy and want to travel the world, and always thought that that's, the version of marriage you see in Delhi is getting tied down. I just hadn't realized that yet. You just need to marry the right person with whom you can do all the things that you wish to do. And I was fortunate enough to find that person, and fortunate enough that he agreed. Right? Marriage is a matching market, so both sides need to feel the same way about the other person, and that we're still together. We've been together for 18 plus years, so that's she would have been surprised by that.
Shout out to Nandu.
Well, my life is a shout out to Nandu. I choose him every day. There's no other relationship in my life that I choose every single day.
Didn't expect you to suddenly get so romantic.
I'm not getting romantic. Again, like, this is the thing about being an economist, right? Like, my demonstrated preference on a daily basis is him, which means he must be my favorite human being.
But that could also happen out of inertia.
I have no inertia.
You have no inertia.
Certainly. Look, marriage is hard enough, even with the perfect and most amazing person that you deeply, deeply love. Inertia is just, being trapped if you don't have the perfect person or you're not deeply in love just sounds so awful to me that, no, not at all.
The surprising bit would be at 18, I was going into engineering college. So that was the world I was choosing. So I think that person would be surprised that I have, and by that time at that age I was not reading a lot. Also, I was reading the textbooks. Well, I was reading the newspaper, but not beyond that. So I think that person would be surprised that I got a chance to be in an atmosphere where I am reading a lot of things, meeting a lot of more interesting people, and being able to, if someone tells me, okay, tell me about, I don't know, tell me about how China operates, it's a random question. At least I'll be able to think of 2-3 books and help them that, okay, these are the books that, because at that age I didn't have that kind of a broad experience, and my reading wasn't that great. So I think that would be surprised that for most of the subjects that are there, I would have some references to give. So that is something which makes me happy though. And what else? What was the other question? What would you?
I mean, surprised by what would he have liked and what would he have been horrified by?
Horrified, yeah. I always wanted to be a cricketer at that point of time also. So obviously that didn't work out. So yeah, horrified by that.
Were you good at cricket?
Reasonably good. Yeah. I mean, but I was in Goa, so I was okay. In Goa, there was not...
You could have... Did you play for any state team?
Some selected in some... camp, some under 16 and all that, but nothing. But then in our company, etc., I captained our cricket team, etc. But so I mean, my dreams were all about cricket till one point of time. So that would be a change. But one thing I would be absolutely happy was at that point of time also one thing was clear in my mind. I want to be in India and do something in small little way which makes me feel that I'm doing something in India for India. So I think I am there on that counts. That would make me happy.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to answer the question, I'll just say that, like with Shruti, the bare biographical details would be extremely surprising. The 19-year-old me would be massively shocked at seeing my size. I was super skinny. I think I was in the late 50s. I was not 1950s, in the late 50 kgs. And I was super skinny. And you could, I mean, I have a post about how skinny I was, which I'll
link a photo of when you were 20.
Yeah,
I was also skinny.
You could count my ribs. Like I would not walk against the direction of the wind if I was wearing a t-shirt because you could see my ribs.
This is the show don't tell part of Amit and Amit's
Yeah.
writing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All the vivid descriptions are now popping up, and now I'm thinking about Amit's ribs.
But weirdly, I think if the 19-year-old me saw the me today, he would refuse to accept that it's the same person.
Mm.
Because I think in many ways, just changed so much. And I think that me was very shallow, wanted worldly success, wanted to be a star, etc., etc. And also was very arrogant and overestimated his abilities. And so I just think I've kind of, like, some people retain the essence of themselves throughout. And some people change so much that it seems that the younger them was a stranger. And I'm much closer to the second one. I can recognize some things, such as the laziness and the daydreaming. Do you guys daydream?
I only daydream.
About what?
Everything.
How have your daydreams changed? What did you daydream about at 19?
Very similar things. Random ideas, musings, music that comes and goes from my head. I don't have to listen to music to hear music in my head. Like, I can just, right now, some stuff is playing in my head kind of thing. So, yeah, daydream about horses, about dogs, about animals, about weird economic models, the column I'm going to write, the column I'm supposed to be writing, the book I haven't written.
But those are musings. Like, daydreams are, when you daydream about you doing something. Like, I'm sure Pranay has daydreamed about winning the World Cup for India.
I'm daydreaming about meeting my next horse. That's what I mean. All this is daydreaming only.
In my mind, always some cricket match is going on.
In your daydreaming. Even
You
today.
really need to hang out with Nandu. I'm a cricket widow married to a cricket tragic. I think Asha and I need to hang out.
Yeah.
It was more intense at that age, but it still goes on. Yeah.
Who's your favorite cricket writer? You can't say Amit.
I didn't read
He
much
wasn't
of
going-
cricket. Right? I
Oh, you
just
didn't.
watched.
I prefer reading about cricket than watching cricket because I love cricket writing so much, and that's thanks to you and Nandu and Prem Panikar and all these people. I have realized something about my husband which is kind of hilarious. So he told me at the end of this long trip we took, I think I prefer reading about travel than the actual travel. Like, you have to pack and go to an airport and there are delays, and the trip is always more disappointing than the actual reading about the trip. And I'm like, that's insane. I love traveling. And I guess he feels the same way about cricket.
I enjoy traveling, and one and this is very elitist, but one thing I decided this year that I'm only going to travel business class because I'm old enough and I'm going to enjoy myself. And so when we were going to Spain, I was kind of joking, but it's not exactly a joke, where I told my wife that you're going for a holiday to Spain, I'm going for a holiday to Etihad. So, so I kind of like the trappings of the good life. I love getting new little bits of tech, shiny toys, and I guess we're hardwired to do that. And I think I've earned the right and paid my dues, and I've earned the right to indulge in some of those new toys when I get them. So do you guys have any new toys you got this year which you're happy about?
Well, horses, which is not something. No, I'm kidding. A toy. I didn't buy the toy, but I've never been a visual person, like a photographer or anything like that. But I figured if I'm going to the Masai Mara, I have to take pictures because it's my one time being 5 feet, 10 feet away from horses. And one of our common friends who's been on your podcast helped me figure out what kind of camera I should get. My brother-in-law is like a very tech-heavy person, so he knows about every camera. And so I actually ended up renting a camera. And it's one of those very sophisticated Sony, whatever, Alpha series, something that I don't remember. Like a monkey could shoot with that camera and you'd get great pictures. But I have great pictures of elephants, and I don't know if they're great pictures by photography standards, but they're great pictures for me because now I can remember every elephant that I met, and like the cheetah and the leopard, and like basically every creature that I was just like so enamored by. So the ability to just rent a camera and like pay $100 a day, which is an outrageous sum of money for a camera, and just take it for a few weeks to Masai Mara is just, that was lovely. That was probably my big tech indulgence. I'm not a very tech person. My usual indulgence is LPs.
You don't even need tech. Like my favorite toy of the year, and this is going to sound very, very bizarre, is a back scratcher. So it is this back. I'll have to see if it's in my bag. I'll show it to you. And you really pull
This
it
is
out
not a
and it
human
gets really
scratching
long.
your back and you scratch his
No,
back
no,
and
no, no,
metaphor.
no, no. This is what looks like pretty small, but it's got an extendable handle, and then you can scratch your back with it. And
How
it's-
lazy are you?
Huh? I'm Bengali. What the fuck? Yeah.
Okay, what is this level of fitness that you can't reach your back with your hands?
No, in the sense, I kinda can, but why bother?
I wish someone everyone could
So
see
I
Pranay's
can just
face.
see. I can just lift my arm like this, and I can just
Pranay's laughing
go
so hard,
like
he has
this
tears
and-
coming down his eyes and he's wiping his eyes. Okay,
Yeah.
just dear gentle listener.
No.
Okay, Amit,
So,
no.
yeah.
Amit, you
What
need to go
no?
to your favorite new toy
Dude,
needs
it's
to
a
be the gym. You can't
Great back scratcher.
can't
It's
use
one
a
of-
back scratcher.
It's India's best.
You are
back
not
scratcher.
that old yet. This is mortifying. No, your 19-year-old self would be horrified that you're using a back scratcher and calling it your favorite
We've
toy.
discussed that he would not recognize me. Because, yeah, and also he was so thin, it was easy for him to reach his back. My logistics are
You
a bit
can reach
harder.
your back at any size. This is ridiculous. We are going to have a chat about this over lunch.
But Pranay, what about your tech?
LLMs.
Yeah, of course.
they're mind
That's
blowing.
the toy which
But
is
that's
useful.
not a toy. That is like a lifestyle. That's a life tool, gadget, work process, everything.
For me, it's still a toy because I'm experimenting.
Huh.
It,
What's your AI stack? What are the ways in which you guys use AI in your life?
Everything.
no, I don't use it so extensively yet.
Specific.
So I'll give like right now the search is Perplexity helps a lot. Even for small things like if you like I have a conference to go to France. So earlier to how to apply for a French visa, it's better to do that on Perplexity than to do this on Google search. So that's one really easy thing. The other thing, as I was saying, building new tools, building new code is much easier for doing small little things that were otherwise too tedious and hence you couldn't do, but now you can try to build them on your own. That's an experiment. The option of spaces is quite good, right? So we were doing this book on public finance this year. And what I found quite useful is we created a space for the book. So in that I gave a meta prompt which for editing. So I told it because I wanted to get a first feedback of I had a style that I wanted to that was there in my book proposal. So I put that as a prompt and I kept feeding the chapters to it which I had written to get some feedback on does it fit this style which I wanted or not. And then it gave it, okay, no, this doesn't fit in, this style is going awry. So then I changed based on that feedback a few things. So those kinds of things really help, just having a specific space and a big prompt and then different things. Notebook LM is quite amazing. I think that is the most powerful tool
you use.
Yeah. So just the fact that you can it responds based on the sources that you have given it to it and nothing beyond it, right? And it can create mind maps, it can create podcast episodes.
Oh,
all
wow.
those things are really good to use. So the hallucination in it is quite less because it only answers based on the sources that you give them, and if it doesn't find them it will say it is not there in this reference documents. So that is good because one thing for example we are trying to do is can all of the Takshashila documents be on Notebook LM so that anyone can ask questions to it and understand. Then Ashish Kulkarni has developed this Learn LM, which is quite cool as well. So
With an EV winner and it's an EV project.
Yes, that's
Well done,
such a cool
congratulations.
project. Because what it does is it is adaptive learning. So for the learner can even say like someone like me would say I love cricket, I'll understand the analogies of cricket. So based on it can explain neuromorphic computing to me based on what I know about cricket, so it will try to analogize based on what you already know and you're comfortable with. So that's a very nice way to learn. So yeah, there are many other things I'm just exploring. So for me it is a toy. Just in the experimental stage.
I use it for everything in a way that I think alarms people around me. So I use it for research, all the usual work stuff. The dog essay that you really liked. I don't like the way it suggests edits, but I like sentence by sentence edits sometimes. Like, when I write, sometimes I'm just unhappy with a couple of sentences and I can just ask it, can you write this for me 20 different ways or 10 different ways? And maybe I'm not happy with any of them, but just going over 20 versions of it will clarify for myself what it is I want to say. And it just helps me get there faster. So I like the way the LLMs help you edit, but like if you just toss it in and say, edit this for me, it's basically just going to proofread or shorten or do something horrible. But if you're very specific and intentional and give it a couple of sentences here and there, it does a really nice job. So helps with writing, helps with research, helps with, dictating emails when I'm motion sick in Bangalore traffic, that kind of thing. It's awesome, man. I have used it for crazy things like, recipes or, just take a picture of things and say, what the hell is going on here? How do I clean this LP? And will these scratches ever get fixed? Like everyday, very practical kind of problems. I took a picture of when our boiler and HVAC, but there was like some leak. I couldn't figure out where it's from. And then it helped me solve that. So that kind of stuff. I recently did something and Nandu was amazed by it and he said, I'm going to use this hack. We were at a wedding and it was assigned seating and I was at a table with a very fancy person that I knew nothing about, but it was crystal clear that this is a very fancy person. So I immediately just quietly put the name in ChatGPT and I said, tell me a little bit about this person and what is the best way to have a conversation with them that would not bore them. And I got like a few suggestions and things like that. Because I'm not familiar with like the US establishment in any way. So it was just like, so that kind of, I just, when I have a question, I'm like, okay, how can I solve this?
And did that help?
It did a lot. And then I showed it. Nandu was sitting right next to me because, he was my +1 for the wedding. And he's like, this is amazing. I need to adopt this use case a little bit more. Even simple things, of course, all the search and research and what kind of horses do you have in Bangalore and what is local, like, anything I'm interested in, I'll just start. Earlier I never had a conversation. I gave a very detailed prompt and I wanted the answer. Now I love the conversation mode because it's like I'm thinking and writing aloud. Right? And sometimes when you're prompting in a conversation, whatever answer you get, you're like, Arey, but that's not what I asked, which immediately clarifies for you that the way you phrase the prompt is totally off and it just makes you a better writer.
Is it making you ask better questions?
I would hope so. Otherwise, my LLMs are going to be damn pissed with me. So I really hope it's making me ask better questions. What else have I used it for recently? I use it a lot for EV interview prep. Because like people are doing insane projects like building nuclear fusion. Sometimes I'm like, is someone trolling me? Like, is this even possible? Because it's out of the realm of imagination for me. And so then I have to tell GPT exactly what you said about, notebook LLM or whatever. Like I'm an economist. I have only 10th grade physics or chemical engineering or chemistry or whatever. Please explain this to me in a way I understand. Is this actually possible? Does this make sense? What are the questions one should be thinking about in this particular field? And it really helps. So a lot of my interview prep is no longer reading a book or the Wikipedia page for that particular project. It's more just learning through the LLM talking to me.
So, when I think about my answer to this question, it actually segues to the next question I was going to ask you, which is how are you looking forward to 2026 and what are the things you want to do? But my when I think about the AI I use, obviously, I use GPT-5. I do a lot of deep research. I get a lot out of that in terms of research. And I use a lot of image creation. And I've been playing around a lot with image to video. I've used both Helluo.ai, which is a Chinese this thing. And I've used Grok Imagine, which is miraculously, unbelievably good. Like 6 months ago, I could tell a deepfake from a real thing. Now I can't. It's just gotten really good. And this got me to thinking about two things I want to explore at some length, which I think hold possibilities for all of us, and future applications to you, Shruti, will surely be young people experimenting in these domains. One of them comes from a thought I had when I was watching the brilliant animated series BoJack Horseman a few years ago, where I was so inspired by it that I started writing my own story and my own whatever. And then I said that, Amit, just give up, because you can never make an animated series. You are an introvert, you have no connections in the industry. Kabhi nahi hoga. You write your book and you do all of that first. Don't get ahead of yourself. Then the thought struck me that one day the AI is going to get to the level where I can sit alone in a room, generate my own starting characters and use them to generate my own animated series and do everything by myself without involving another human being. Pretty radical thought, pretty obvious is going to be possible soon. I mean, this is the ultimate means of production in your hands possible. But then a second thought recently came to me when I was experimenting with image to video, and this is truly something I'm trying to grapple with, and it blows my mind. in the late 1980s, my father happened to be the director of the Film Institute in Pune. So I grew up on a diet of world cinema. I was watching Fellini and Antonioni at the same time as I'm watching David Dhawan and Yash Chopra. And to me, there was no art cinema, commercial cinema. It was films I liked and films I did not like. And my two earliest ambitions were I want to be a writer and I want to be a filmmaker. And then I thought, wait a minute, as Sartre says, hell is other people. So filmmaking involves other people. नहीं करेंगे हम सिर्फ write करेंगे अकेले लिख सकते हैं. Now different matter that I haven't done enough writing. Today I realize that is true also of filmmaking, because I believe we are getting to the stage where you can sit in a room alone and make a live action feature film with people, with actors who look completely real, which could be either based on the likeness of real actors where you buy image rights, or completely generated characters which nevertheless look so real that you can't make the difference, and you can script and make an entire feature film sitting in your room by yourself, and no one can tell whether it's real or not real. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen anytime soon, but we overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term. So I would just say that don't underestimate the long term. This is inevitable at some point. It is incredibly powerful. I was having the same conversation with Samarth Bansal, who's been on the show, and Samarth was saying, oh, but
Also
there's
an EV winner.
also an EV winner. Yeah, you are full main character syndrome when it comes to EV, Shruti. But so Samarth was sort of saying, oh, but the beauty is in the collaborative process and all that, and working with other people. And my point was that this increases your options. You don't have to stop working with other people, but you also are not constrained for resources anymore. I see so many, script writers with great stories today in Bombay running around from OTT platform to OTT platform to studio, where they encounter idiots who don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they don't need to go through gatekeepers. They can actually make their own stuff, and that's beautiful. And plus, the great collaborative projects can still happen. This does not foreclose the old way of working, but it opens new possibilities. And in the next year, now the live action stuff is way off, but in the next year, I do want to explore doing more image to video stuff, to do animated things and try storytelling in that way. And I think there's just a lot of possibility there. So I'm super excited about this.
Has it already reached a place where you can recreate something like BoJack Horseman, the animation quality of BoJack Horseman?
The animation quality, I believe so, but rather than make a definitive statement, I think it's a question of proving it. See, the great thing about BoJack Horseman is the story, the story and the characters. It is not at all the animation quality. Now, that animation quality, or even the animation quality of the Ghibli films, for example, is super easy to do. But the genius there is the stories. So I'm saying that that's a constraint. If you're a great storyteller, the tools are there, and you no longer need to run through hoops or spend a lot of money to get to work and make something. And I'm super inspired by this.
Is the constraint in storytelling also going away because of AI?
No, I don't think so, because you still need to understand what's a good story, curate a good story. Like, I will turn to AI to help me bring my prompts to reality, but I will never turn to AI for the core creative process of the storytelling. Because to me, then I might as well not live. I mean, the whole point of creating is the process of creating. You're doing something. But I'm just so excited that we have all of these tools. So yes, maybe Shruti is right. We may all die one day, but life is not so meaningless.
Life is very meaningful every day, all the time. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm right now looking forward to lunch.
Yeah, so we'll go. Final question for you guys. Therefore, in 2026, what are you looking forward to doing?
Oh, there's lots of things. I mean, all the usual stuff, hanging out more with animals, being kinder, spending more time with family, all the usual things that I've been working towards, hopefully continuing on the good fitness trend and not spiraling back. But the big one is Mercatus. The India program is going to do a policy fellowship, and we basically want to experiment with young people who want a career in policy but are not getting incubated, and especially those who want to work on policy at the state level, right? There's a lot of Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore bias, but there is no thinking going on about what Odisha and specifically Odisha should be doing, right? And there's talent there. They have the context, but we'll put them in Delhi in some big think tank. They'll also lose their core and pretend to be someone else, and they don't get the best out of them. And Delhi is just too unkind to strangers to actually properly incubate a policy professional. So the idea is we are crafting this as we speak. We're going to workshop it at the conference. I've been talking to you guys about it. And we'll pick, I think, about 10 people. And the goal is to incubate them for about 3 years. So there will be some standard programming that all of you will be involved in, GCPP, clear writing, all the usual stuff. A lot of it in year 1. And then we will cull them down from, say, 10 to 7 or something like that. Just to, this is not a business where there's profit and loss, right? So you got to keep some tight incentives. And then year 2 and year 3, they just go gangbusters at what they're doing. And they can take the fellowship and work anywhere. So they can work at a local think tank, a local newspaper, at the local MLA's office or the chief minister's office or, state finance commission, whatever their passion is. But they will respond to us, but be immersed in that particular context, because it's hard to just sit at home and learn and write. But it'll be a properly paid fellowship. It won't be like, please do this out of passion. Because the trouble with, this is also, we were talking about this, Pranay and I, that my idea of inclusivity is to pay people well, because otherwise only the rich and privileged can be included in whatever we do. So I've been wanting to do this for years, but it's hard to raise money for these things. So we're going to launch it in about 20 days. We're going to launch the applications. And I'm very excited. Now I know through EV that looking at the applications, talking to young people, even the interview process, it can become a chore, or you can craft it and make it such that you can really engage with the person. So I'm looking forward to talking to a lot of young policy people, and hopefully we get the best 10 that are out there and interested in working with us, and then just working with them for the next few years.
Sounds amazing, mind-blowing. I mean, both of you guys have made the ecosystem so much richer, with EV on the one hand and Takshashila on the other. I'm just so much in awe.
Your podcasts, and which keep proliferating, and now there will be Meanderness. I'm going to keep, I'm like Inception, I'm going to keep putting this idea in your head, and before you know it, it will be Meanderness. See?
Oh God, we've been, anyway. So Pranay, 2026, Meanderness, I hope, is part of your plans.
Yes.
See, now my job here is done.
I mean, all the things that I already mentioned, they are still a work in progress. So that family podcast that I have to finish, that I'm excited about. The video essays and doing new things on YouTube is another thing that I'm excited about. Some books in the mind also. So all those things are there. I am excited about all of them. All the things that we are doing at Takshashila and other projects are incredibly exciting. So I just want to continue those. That's fun.
And I'm going to write at least 2 books right here. I'm just putting it out there in public.
Be kind to yourself and stop being ridiculous. You go from back scratching the toy to writing 2 books a year.
Don't call it a toy.
Be reasonable.
My back scratcher helps me be the best version of myself, and it feels so good sometimes when there's an itch to be able to scratch it with minimal effort to optimize that. I don't know if we're
talking about the
solution.
Toy anymore.
All right. So anyway, thank you guys. It's been a great chat. We should have more chats like this. And thank you both for coming on.
Thank you. Wish all the listeners a new 2026. A happy 26.
Yeah. Everyone should be happy and life is meaningful.
Yes. Good
lovely.
Message to end.
And it's so nice to be here in person with both of you. I'm very happy. And in a place that is 5 minutes away from a top class dosa.
Let's go. You want a dosa? I was thinking Italian, but fine. We will figure it. We will figure
Bangalore.
it out.
I am not eating Italian food. I will eat. We are going to Airlines Hotel and we are eating their benne dosa or akki roti. Your choice.
Yes, ma'am. We will eat both. What do you mean your choice?
Even better.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, check out the show notes, enter rabbit holes at will. You can follow Shruti on Twitter at @SRajGopalan. You can follow Pranay at Pranay Kotas. You can follow me at Amit Varma, AMITVARMA. You can browse past episodes of The Seen and the Unseen at seenunseen.in and every podcast app of your choice. Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this episode of The Seen and the Unseen? If so, would you like to support the production of the show? You can go over to seenunseen.in/support and contribute any amount you like to keep this podcast alive and kicking. Thank you.